Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Pirates. I have 300 Heroes Heritage. Chapter 61. Kuina couldn't help but laugh when she saw that Nami, who was still a little silent and sad for her parting with Nu Aochigao and Ajien, was revived by Zan Yu's anger with just such a sentence. It's really an enemy, Kuina thought to herself. However, when she thought about how Nu Aochigao chose to stay in the village and live with other villagers when she left Kokoyashi village before, Kuina actually felt a little regretful. After all, I finally got to know another younger sister, and her personality is very compatible with her sister, but unfortunately they can't see the whole sea together. However, Kuina has some regrets about Nu Aochigao's choice, but she has no objection. Everyone has their own way of life, and perhaps the rural life in Kikiyaxi village is Nokigao's favorite and most suitable way of life. Thinking of this, Kuina is not going to regret. But then, as if thinking of something, Kuina looked at Zan Yu, who once again puffed up Nami's little face. Shaking his head and smiling, Kuina took the puffy Nami in her arms, while touching Nami's orange hair. While comforting Nami, Meimu looked at Zan Yu and asked, "Zan Yu, what exactly did you leave behind for Nu Aochigao? Can you really ensure Nu Aochigao's safety?" Hearing Kuina's words, Nami also looked at Zan Yu, and was obviously very concerned about Nu Aochigao's safety. Zan Yu heard the words, turned around and looked at the two girls. A confident smile twitched at the corners of his mouth. At this time, under the rapid flight of the ice dragon, Zan Yu's white windbreaker was blown by the hem. Look, Zan Yu did not speak directly, but raised his right hand under the gaze of the two women. Immediately afterwards, Kuina and Nami only felt that the surrounding temperature dropped instantly, and then returned to normal. When Zan Yu raised his right hand again, a blood-red ice crystal rose was blooming. Wow, so beautiful. When Nami saw the blood-red ice crystal rose in Zan Yu's hands, he was immediately amazed by the lifelike gesture, and couldn't help but exclaimed in admiration. Kuina also had a surprised look on her face at this time, and then looked at Zan Yu curiously, thinking to herself. This guy Zan Yu, in addition to his unfathomable strength, was also known to have amazing talent in various musical instruments before, but I never thought that he still has such a skill. Is there such a study of flowers? How many things do you have that Miss Ben doesn't know? At this moment, Kuina can't wait to investigate Zan Yu inside and out, and take a good look at how much this guy has grown that he doesn't know about. Zan Yu still didn't know that his own hand of ice crystal rose would evoke Kuina's strong desire to explore. He looked at the two women at this moment and looked at the ice crystal rose in his hand in amazement, and said with a smile. This is the life-saving thing I gave Nu Aochigao, yay. It can even be said to be a means of killing the enemy. You guys have to keep your eyes open and take a good look at its power. After finishing speaking, Zan Yu held Nami, Kuina's curious eyes, pinched the flower branch of the ice crystal rose, and then suddenly threw it to the sky in the distance. A second later, the ice crystal rose suddenly shattered under the gaze of the two women. It turned into countless blood-red powder, reflecting colorful rays of light under the sunlight, beautiful as a fantasy. However, under this beauty, it is accompanied by infinite murder. The space shrouded in blood-colored powder was condensed directly under the gaze of the two women. Whether it was the air, the clouds, or the strong wind, it was directly frozen by the cold air released at the moment when the blood-colored ice crystal rose was broken. Nami even saw that at the edge of the frozen area, the space seemed to be frozen with a few dark cracks. Impressive, Nami subconsciously exclaimed. At this time, Kuina was also looking at the dark space cracks and exclaimed, Zan Yu's ultimate chill can actually achieve the level of freezing cracked space, it's really amazing. Zan Yu just smiled at the praise of the two women and said, "This is an ice skill that I developed, and its name is Ice Crystal Rose. As for its effect, you have seen it all. It is precisely because I have sealed all the coldness of ultimate in the Ice Crystal Rose flower. Under normal circumstances, even if it is placed under the sun, it will not melt, but when you want to fight the enemy, as long as the ice crystal rose is thrown out, it will be a radius of the 100-meter range is completely frozen. And I gave Nu Aochigao a total of 3 ice crystal roses. Even if Nu Aochigao is within the freezing range, the remaining ice crystal roses in her hands will absorb and store the cold air close to Nu Aochigao, will not hurt Nu Aochigao himself." After the introduction, Zan Yu looked at Nami and Kuina with a smile and asked, "How about you? don't worry now. Nami nodded again and again, like a cute kitten. Kuina was also relieved at this time, nodded and said with a light smile. I didn't expect you to have such an ability, it's really surprising. Just as she was talking, Kuina was stunned for a moment, then she looked at the sea level in the distance, at the black spot that was getting bigger and bigger, and said, Hey, there seems to be an island ahead, are we going to Logue Town? Zanyu also turned around when he heard the words, observation haki spread out directly, and then turned to look at Nami next to him, surprised. I really have some sailing skills, but I actually found Logue Town. Nami looked at Zanyu's surprised appearance, and immediately raised his nose and looked smug. However, before Nami was happy for a long time, Zanyu's voice sounded faintly. As expected of my chosen sailor, good, it seems that my vision is as accurate as ever. Shameless. Before the smugness on Nami's face dissipated, he was pissed off by Zanyu's words. This time, even Kuina couldn't stand it anymore. He rolled Zanyu's eyes and said angrily, Zanyu, stop being sloppy. Since we're almost at Logue Town, let's go down and take a small wooden boat to the port, otherwise you ice dragon will be too ostentatious. We come to Logue Town for the purpose of going to the Marine Branch base to get the nautical chart of the Grand Line. There is no need to make too much fanfare and everyone knows it. Zanyu also nodded, and then controlled the ice dragon to descend to the sea and disperse the ice dragon. The three of them rowed the small wooden boat towards Logue Town. However, what they don't know is that the current Logue Town Marine has already set up a net, waiting for the three of Zanyu to join the net. Half an hour later, a unicast wooden boat slowly approached from the sea and gradually entered the area of Logue Town. However, compared to the various large boats coming and going on the lively sea at this time, this wooden boat is indeed so ordinary and inconspicuous, just like an ordinary fishing boat. Hey, look at that little wooden boat. It actually came to the largest port in Logue Town to dock. Don't you know that this is where our large ships are parked? Ha 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 ha, I guess it's a soil spore from a certain small village in East Blue, don't you know the rules of Logue Town? Hey, do you think it might be a pirate ship? It's the kind of little pirate who just went out to sea, who is desperately planning to go to the Grand Line. Hey, don't say it, there is such a possibility. But if it is really a pirate ship, then it seems that the guy on it is not only a soil spore, but also doesn't even know the big news of East Blue. Yeah, who doesn't know that Marine Hero Garp is sitting in Logue Town now and has caught an unknown number of pirates in the past month? Yes, especially in the last 3 days, the entire Logue Town has been completely under martial law. Not to mention the pirates entering Logue Town to make trouble, even stepping into Logue Town is almost delusional. The port of Logue Town is now. On the large ships that went out to sea or returned one after another, sailors or guests pointed at the small, slow boats, and some even shouted directly at the small wooden boats. However, in response to the shouts from the passing ships, the wooden ship did not make any movement, and still just slowly sailed into the port. At this time, pairs of marine soldiers patrolled back and forth from time to time. If suspicious ships were found, they would all be searched. Arrested. At this time, as such a maverick wooden boat entered the port, it was naturally attracted. Attention all marine soldiers. However, no one did it directly. All the Marines just clenched their weapons and stood on the spot, their eyes locked directly on the small wooden boat that came in, as if they wanted to see the whole small wooden boat through their eyes. Immediately, the entire port of Logue Town fell silent, only the roar of ships coming and going starting or stopping. However, for this strange scene, whether it is the passing ships or the residents near the port, Ahaf has already seen it at this time. After all, in the past 3 days, there have been dozens of scenes like this, not 100 times a day, they have already become accustomed to it. In such a strange atmosphere, the small wooden boat finally docked. Then, a sound of footsteps sounded from the wooden boat. At this time, on the shore of the port, the marine soldiers stared solemnly at the cabin door of the small wooden boat, as if they wanted to know who the owner of the footsteps was. Oh, under the gaze of the marine soldiers, 3 figures walked out from the cabin of the small wooden boat as the door opened. They are Zanyu, Kuina, and Nami. When the marine soldiers saw Kuina, their eyes shrank slightly, and then all the marine soldiers seemed to have found nothing, and resumed their previous serious patrol look. However, What these Marine soldiers did not see was the playfulness and drama that flashed in the eyes of the three Zanyu when they watched them. The moment the pair of Marine soldiers left the port and entered the street, their expressions changed drastically. The one just now is definitely the peerless sword princess Kuina, right? That's right, I saw it. And the man next to her, the little white face who was offered a reward of 100 Bailey, I have a deep influence on him, absolutely right. Well, I saw Kuina too. At this time, a Marine wearing the rank of sergeant nodded after listening to everyone's answers, and said, it seems that this time it is indeed the person Garp Vice Admiral named. In that case, then, contact Captain Smoker. Let Captain Smoker make the next decision. This time, we must arrest Wushwang Jianji Kuina. People who can't let the head office look down on our branch. Understand? When the Marine soldiers heard the words, they immediately replied seriously. Yes, Sergeant Marine nodded when he saw this, then took the phone bug and started contacting their commander, Smoker. At this time, in the high-rise building next to the execution square in Logue Town, Smoker held 2 cigars in his mouth, put his hands on the window, looked at the Marine soldiers who were patrolling the streets in Logue Town from time to time, and then stared at the execution platform below. The thoughts returned to the scene when Roger was executed 18 years ago. Back then, when Roger was executed, the scene of martial law in Logue Town was also like this. At this moment, a familiar voice of Thunderbolt outside the house instantly pulled Smoker's thoughts back to reality. Shaking his forehead helplessly, Smoker muttered silently, Tashigi, this confused woman. As Smoker's voice fell, Tashigi's apology came from outside the house. I'm sorry. It's all my fault, I shouldn't be walking and running, I'm really sorry. Hearing the apology that was so skillful and distressing, Smoker sighed again. Hey. After a while, Tashigi pushed open the door and came in, but at this time Tashigi was holding a pair of shattered glasses. Smoker turned his head and glanced at Tashigi, who was looking at the glasses in his hand with a pity-like expression, and exhaled a smoke ring, saying, Have you read your little book with information about famous knives on the road again? Tashigi, who has short navy blue hair and looks exactly like Kuina, heard Smoker's words, then put down his broken glasses, looked up in Smoker's direction, and replied. Well, I searched all the information about famous swords before, but I couldn't find any famous sword similar to the sword in Kuina's hand. After talking about the famous sword, the original pity expression on Tashigi's small face disappeared instantly, and the expression was full of excitement. Whether it is the rumored supreme 12 great knives, or the 21 great knives, and even the shapes, hilts, and scabbards of many of the more well-known good knives, I have gone through them. By comparing them, I found that there is no other knife like it. So I guess, the knife in Kuina's hand is definitely a new and famous knife. And with Kuina's identity as a great swordsman, that knife is definitely at least at the level of a big quick sword, and there is even a high possibility that it is a supreme big quick sword. The famous knife. I really want to see it with my own eyes. Smoker looked at Tashigi after naming the sword. His expression became more and more excited, as if he had endless words to say, after the corners of his eyes twitched fiercely. He couldn't help but spit out 2 eye sockets, and Smoker said softly. Shut up, Tashigi. Tashigi, who was drunk and shut his mouth, closed his mouth subconsciously, and then reacted, pouted, but did not say anything about the famous sword, turned to Smoker, and asked curiously. Smoker Captain, why did Garp Vice Admiral go to such a lengthy effort to take down Kuina? Let's not say that Kuina's so-called crime is just killing a rubbish noble. Even in the face of a real big pirate, there is no need to fight such a big battle, right? Hearing Tashigi's doubts, Smoker turned to look at the execution platform under the high-rise building again, took 2 cigars at the corners of his mouth, and exhaled 2 large clouds of white smoke. Suddenly, Smoker was shrouded in white smoke. No one could see Smoker's expression at this time. Then he said solemnly, yeah, there was a big pirate who was treated by such a battle. Hearing this, Tashigi immediately looked curiously at Smoker's back shrouded in white smoke, and asked curiously. Who? Why haven't I heard of such a thing? Because you were only a year or 2 old at the time. Tashigi's voice fell, and Smoker replied immediately. Although you haven't experienced that incident personally, you should have probably heard of it. 18 years ago, in the same Logue town, when a pirate was executed, the marine action plan of today's scale was used. That pirate is the pirate king of the year, Roger. One Piece, Roger. Hearing this, Tashigi's face was full of disbelief. Could it be that, in Garp Vice Admiral's mind, Kuina's danger has risen to the level of One Piece? Not to mention Tashigi, even Smoker, who was shrouded in white smoke at this time, was extremely puzzled. However, Smoker does not think that Kuina can be compared with that man. After all, whether it is reported strength or influence, Kuina at this time is far from being comparable to the man on the execution platform below. So, what fact did the headquarters hide? Otherwise, it would never have directly allowed Garp Vice Admiral to make such a fuss in this Logue town. So, what did Kuina do to get this department to issue such an order? For a moment, Smoker in the white smoke narrowed his eyes and pondered. In fact, it's no wonder that Smoker doesn't know about this, because in Sengoku's view, Garp has shot, even if Kuina is a great swordsman. She still can't escape Garp's arrest. After all, this time is a must-kill order. Garp will never be merciful again. In Sengoku's eyes, Kuina is already a criminal who is about to be sent to Impel Down, erased from history, or killed directly by Garp, and there is no need to make a new bounty. That's why Kuina's revenge, the crime of killing Marine soldiers, no one knows about it except Sengoku, Crane, Garp, and the communications room intelligence officers. Just as Smoker was thinking about all kinds of possibilities in his mind, there was another hurried knock on the door, and then he heard a soldier outside the door anxiously shouting, "Colonel Smoker, spot the trail of Kuina's gang." Hearing this, Smoker's expression froze, and he immediately took out his characteristic seastone weapon, plus hand, and walked towards the door. At the same time, to Tashigi, who looked equally solemn on the other side. "The war has begun, Tashigi. You go and report this information to Garp Vice Admiral, and pay attention to the evacuation of the crowd." Yes, on the other side, on a more prosperous street in Logue Town, in a tavern. Zanyu, Kuina, and Nami sat at the bar. After Nami took a sip of the wine, he glanced at Zanyu, who was stirring the steaming coffee with a spoon, and pouted. A big man came to the pub and ordered a cup of coffee without drinking. Squirt. Kuina, who was also drinking wine, heard Nami's words and looked at Zanyu curiously, saying, "Speaking of which, I don't seem to have seen Zanyu. You drink, except for red wine, but even red wine you rarely drink. When it comes to coffee, I often see you drinking. What, Zanyu, don't you like the smell of wine?" Zanyu heard the words, the hand stirring the coffee paused, and said with a smile, "Yeah, as for wine, it's not like I dislike it, it's just that I like coffee more because of someone's influence." Hearing Zanyu's answer, Nami was obviously not very satisfied, and immediately retorted, "Cut, the answer is still so perfunctory. When you were on the buggy pirate ship for a month, you read books. When I asked the reason, you answered that you were influenced by someone. Not long ago, after you demonstrated the ice crystal rose, I asked you why you also studied flowers, and you told me that it was influenced by someone. Like coffee now, or are you influenced by someone? Can you be more perfunctory?" Zanyu heard that, he just smiled and didn't say anything about Nami's complaints. However, what Zanyu didn't notice was that Kuina, who was sitting on the other side, stopped drinking, and there was a bit of complexity in her beautiful eyes. "Is this someone the one she who has always lived in your heart? Who is she? Why has she been able to live in your heart since childhood? Why is she not by your side, but she can affect every bit of your life? I'm a little envious of her." Perhaps sensing something was wrong with the atmosphere at the scene, Zanyu suddenly said, saying, "Guess how long before Marine will shoot us this time?" Hearing this, Nami immediately opened up his heart and spread directly to the entire Logue town. "I bet 3 minutes." Nami turned his head to look at Zanyu and believed. However, just as Nami's voice fell, Kuina on the other side said directly, "I bet, next second." Just as Kuina's voice fell, a huge roar suddenly sounded. Immediately, a large hole was broken in the wall of the tavern, and countless sawdust, stones, and steel fragments diffused directly toward the entire tavern. What's the matter? Did a pirate come in? How is that possible? Pirates, don't they know that Marine hero Garp is in Logue Town? Garp Vice Admiral caught so many pirates this month, and now there are still pirates who dare to make trouble here. Yet, stop talking nonsense, run away. Whether it's a pirate or not, it's definitely not something we can face. Yes, yes, let's go. Immediately, the other guests in the tavern, together with the tavern owner and the waiter, all ran away frantically. However, just at this moment, a cold wind passed by, and the dust and debris that flew all over the sky were all frozen and fell to the ground before they approached the bar. It takes time for the air to be clear. Zhan Yu took a long sip of the coffee in his hand, then chuckled. Coffee is still better when it's hot. By the way, won't Mr. Garp come to drink a cup of 337? Why do you have to fight so hard as soon as you come in? Nami and Kuina, who were both at the bar, drank their drinks and ate their desserts calmly, as if nothing had happened. Mr. Garp, a group of guests who had not yet escaped, the bar owner also stopped when he heard the words, turned his head and looked in the direction of the big hole in the wall. Ha ha ha, compared to coffee, the old man prefers to drink some spirits, that's what men should drink. With this old and powerful voice, a figure with a dog head mask and a marine coat came out from behind the hole in the smoky city. When the residents of Logue Town saw this scene, their eyes widened. Really, Mr. Garp? Mr. Garp is as good as ever. That's not it. Look at the layer around the big hole in the wall. The steel bar was directly broken by a punch from Garp Vice Admiral. Just when everyone was praising Garp's strength, one person suddenly said, "But why is Mr. Garp here? Isn't he catching pirates all the time? Is it possible?" The voice fell, and everyone's eyes turned towards the bar. She is the great pirate swordsman Kuina, who has a bounty of 80 million Bailey. At the moment of seeing Kuina, many people said that they exclaimed. After all, in East Blue, where the highest reward is only 50 million Baileys, a giant crocodile with 80 million Baileys suddenly appeared, and everyone will inevitably pay more attention to Kuina's situation. What's more, living in this Logue Town, which must be passed through whether it is to go out to sea or like the sea, naturally pay more attention to the information of some big pirates, so that in the future, if you encounter these big pirates that can't be offended, you will be able to get there early. Some escape. This is the way of life of the residents of Logue Town. After Kuina, who was drinking, heard the title of the Great Pirate, Lu's eyebrows could not help but wrinkle slightly. At this time, Garp's figure had entered the tavern, and he took a deep look at the three people on the bar, especially when he looked at Zhan Yu in the middle, his eyes narrowed slightly. Afterwards, Garp shouted directly to the surrounding civilians who had not left. Everyone leave here immediately, there will be danger here in a while, the old man may not be able to take care of you at that time. After Garp finished spraying, he stared at Zhan Yu and the three of them, preventing them from attacking these ordinary people and catching some hostages and threatening him. However, what surprised Garp a little was that the 3 men and 2 women on the bar had been drinking and eating desserts since they were young, and they had no intention of doing anything. When a group of civilians heard Garp's words, they hurriedly ran outside. However, when they ran out of the tavern and came to the street outside, they looked at the marine soldiers who were surrounded by the surrounding area, and even saw the marine base in Logue Town in charge of Colonel Smoker and the very famous female marine Tashigi. One by one was astonished. In order to capture the 3 people inside, Marine actually mobilized such a force. Are those 3 people really that powerful? Smoker looked at the commoners who were watching him and others at the entrance of the tavern. He couldn't help frowning, and shouted. All ordinary people hurry up and go here, there will be a war here in a while, and leave quickly if you don't want to die. Smoker's remarks instantly surprised all the stunned civilians, and quickly turned around and ran. After taking a breath of the 2 cigars in his mouth, Smoker glanced at the civilians who had left, and then his eyes locked on the tavern again. Today, is everything finally over? Inside the tavern, Zhan Yu glanced at the hall that had already run away, then smiled at Garp, who had already taken off his dog head mask, and said with a smile. Can Mr. Garp be at ease now? Would you like to come over for a drink? Let's talk. Saying that, Zhan Yu's eyes swept across Garp's body, and through the big hole behind him, he tasted a figure standing in the marine, especially after looking at the face that was almost identical to Kuina, he couldn't help it. Slightly surprised. It turns out that there are such coincidences in this world. After a slight pause, Zhan Yu thought to himself. Is this girl here too? At this time, Garp went directly to the wine rack to pick up a bottle of spirits, raised his head to the sky and took a sip. Then he sat directly opposite the bar, glanced at Kuina, and then looked at Zan Yu and said, "It seems that everyone underestimates you. Your strength seems to be stronger than Kuina. And in terms of danger, you are 10 times better than Kuina. A person with ice ability. The reward of 100 Bailey is not only an insult to you, but also an insult to Marine." With that said, Garp keenly discovered the Han Palace wearing Zan Yu's waist and asked curiously, "Are you still a swordsman?" Zan Yu nodded, then turned to look at Kuina beside him. "Would you like to go out and see? There's a girl who looks just like you outside." Huh. Hearing this, Kuina raised her eyebrows, then turned her head to look outside the big hole, and she saw a girl who looked very similar to herself. The only difference between the two is that one has long hair and the other has short hair, and Tashigi outside is also wearing a pair of big glasses. At this time, Nami on the other side also saw Tashigi after hearing Zan Yu's words, and couldn't help but be surprised. "Hey, Sister Kuina, she really looks almost exactly like you. Why don't we go out and see?" Saying that, Nami's eyes turned to Kuina, his eyes were full of begging. Seeing this, Kuina shook her head helplessly, then got up and walked directly outside. Seeing this, Nami put on a successful smile on his small face, and quickly followed. Seeing the two women walking towards Marine outside, Garp flashed a dignified look on his old cheeks. "I don't know how strong the little girl named Nami next to me is, but if Kuina of the Great Swordsman makes a shot, except for Bolt who can resist a few rounds, the others are almost the result of being instantly killed." Just when he was about to get up, Zan Yu, who was sitting opposite Garp, seemed to see Garp's worries and couldn't help but smile at Garp and said, "Don't worry, we will also fight with your Marines in an open and fair manner. Kuina and Nami don't even bother to do this kind of sneak attack and kill or something, this kind of boring thing, Mr. Garp can rest assured. Also, even if there is going to be a battle for a while, I will freeze the sea outside Logue Town, so let's go to the sea to fight. Presumably Mr. Garp, you don't want the aftermath of the battle to ruin the entire Logue Town." Garp was sitting across from the bar, looking at the young man who didn't have any nervousness or fear on his face until now, and was still sipping his coffee in a leisurely manner. His vigilance increased even more. In this case, one can still maintain such an attitude, or he is an ignorant and fearless person, seductive, or powerful enough to ignore all the surrounding Marines outside, and even ignore himself. However, Garp can be sure that the boy in front of him is definitely the latter. This young man has the absolute certainty of escaping from this old man. This is Garp's body giving back to Garp's answer. Thinking of this, Garp narrowed his eyes, stared at Zan Yu, and said, "What is your purpose? What are you pursuing?" Zan Yu heard the words, but did not answer directly. Instead, he looked at Garp and asked back, "So, Mr. Garp, what is your pursuit?" As soon as Zan Yu's voice fell, he heard Garp sternly said, "The old man is only for the word, justice." Yu heard the words, and a smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. If Kuina and Nami were present at this time, they would definitely complain in unison. Come on, this man's bad taste is about to explode again. Holding a coffee cup in one hand, Zan Yu stared at Garp's firm, unshakable eyes with his ruby red eyes, and said, "Then, can Mr. Garp tell me, what exactly is the justice you stand for? In your eyes, what kind of thing is justice?" At this time, Garp didn't look unreliable at all, looked at Zan Yu with a solemn expression, and said with a sonorous and powerful voice, "Destroy the pirates, protect the people, and bring peace to the sea." As he spoke, Garp's eyes were also fixed on Zan Yu's sapphire ruby red eyes. Garp understands that this is a battle that has already begun, a battle of faith. Zan Yu couldn't help putting down his coffee and applauding after hearing Garp's answer. Clap clap clap. I admire Mr. Garp's justice, but what I want to know most now is, Mr. Garp, have you really implemented your justice? Garp frowned, not quite understanding the meaning of Zan Yu's words. Zan Yu also didn't give a shit, he asked directly. On catching the pirates, Mr. Garp captured all the legends of the sea into Impel Down. You are worthy of the title of Hero Garp. Quote. But when it comes to protecting the public, let me ask Mr. Garp first, do you know about the White Town incident? Zan Yu did not wait for Garp's answer, but directly affirmed. No, you must know. After all, you are also a senior Marine. How could you not know about such a big thing? North Blue used to be a country, Fravens. This country has formed a peculiar landscape of white and flawless trees and ground because of the underground lead mine, and the lead is also a high-quality raw material. But the world government has concealed the lead. The truth of the mine. Once it is mined, it will cause poisoning and lead to lead disease, and the residents will suffer from the disease due to the accumulation of trace toxins, which will shorten the lifespan of each generation of citizens. The skin and hair became whiter and whiter, and he died while suffering severe pain all over his body. The lead disease was not contagious, but the neighboring countries, which were concealed by the world government, blocked all exits from Fravens for fear of being infected. The residents of Baicheng who hoped to emigrate to other countries to seek medical treatment were also shot and killed. Speaking of which, Zhan Yu's eyes seemed to turn into two sharp swords, until Garp's eyes, saying, "Garp Vice Admiral, did you know that at the end of the whole country, only one little boy survived? And he was rescued by pirates. Until now, he is still wanted by your marine, world government." "Ah, Garp Vice Admiral, that is the common people of a whole country, why didn't you protect them at that time?" Having said that, Zhan Yu did not give Garp a chance to refute, and said again. "The same other thing that happened 18 years ago, the West Blue O'Hara incident. This time, it was your marine's own hands to launch a buster call on the entire O'Hara and raise the entire O'Hara to the ground. In the end, only one little girl escaped, and this time, it was your marine. One of them, Vice Admiral, fought his life to come down. Not to mention, the behavior of the scholars who studied history was right or wrong, but what about the other ordinary people? Why let those people go to the bottom of the sea? Garp Vice Admiral, at that time, those civilians also needed yours protect, but what were you doing at that time? Don't say you didn't know the whole story at that time." Having said that, Zhan Yu looked at Garp, whose expression changed, took a sip of coffee, and then continued. "Okay, even if you weren't at naval headquarters when the above two things happened, and you really don't know the situation, then I'll ask another question now. Sabayati Archipelago. Slave auction. Where is a personal trafficker rampant? Every day countless innocent civilians are forcibly tortured by traffickers and sold to auctions. These things happen every day, right under your marine's nose. Don't you, wearing the coat of justice and bearing the name of a marine hero, not hear the wailing of the commoners? Where are the commoners wailing every day? Garp Vice Admiral. Hero Garp. This is what you mean by protecting the people. This is your justice. Hello." Garp looked at the mockery and contempt in Zhan Yu's eyes at this time, and the question that pierced his heart just now, a trace of shame flashed on his face, but then he did look at Zhan Yu and said loudly, "Enough. Of course the old man knows all those things. But what if the old man knows? Behind the things you said, isn't one thing affecting the whole world? Even if the old man knows that those things are wrong and against the justice of the old man, what can he do? Let the old man betray Marine and then overthrow all this. The old man just wants to practice his own justice. Also, only among the Marines, the old man can actively prevent those tragedies that should not happen. I don't have the ability to deal with those fool things you said. What this old man can do is to eliminate the pirates as much as possible and protect as many civilians as possible. This is already the limit of this old man." After saying the last sentence, Garp's high-spirited body, which seemed to bring a sense of security to the commoners, was a little tired, and his eyes also flashed a bit of loneliness. At this moment, Zhan Yu seemed to see Garp from behind. Garp fighting pirates again and again in his life, saving countless ordinary people from crisis and blood again and again. At this moment, even Zhan Yu, who is the enemy, has a feeling of admiration for Garp in his heart. And Garp is indeed a man to admire. Garp's lonely look was only for a moment, and then he returned to his previous self-confidence and hockey's appearance. Glancing at Zhan Yu, Garp saw the change in the expression in Zhan Yu's eyes, and immediately laughed. "Ha ha ha, the old man doesn't need to be pitiful for a hairy boy like you. Now that I'm done talking, the old man is going to start arresting you." The moment he spoke, Garp's fist was covered with a layer of black and shiny armament hockey, and when he raised his fist, it slammed towards Zhan Yu's head. "Ha ha ha. Kid, take a punch from the old man." Seeing that Garp made a sudden move without saying a word, Zhan Yu turned slightly to avoid Garp's punch. However, even so, the style of Garp's fist did not stop, slamming straight to the supervision wall 7 or 8 meters behind Zhan Yu. There was another huge roar, followed by a new big hole in the wall. Outside the big hole, just stood Kuina, Nami, and Tashigi, who was somewhat cautious and defensive. The people outside the tavern looked at this sudden change, and they were all stunned for a moment, but Smoker reflected it, and Kuina and Nami shouted, "Tashigi, come back, everyone is ready, start catching the pirates." Kuina, Nami. The moment he heard Smoker's words, all the soldiers surrounding the tavern raised their guns at Kuina and Nami. A trace of struggle flashed in Tashigi's eyes, and then he became firm, and directly pulled out the good knife from his waist. Xiaoyi Xiu pointed at Kuina and Nami, and said, "Sorry, although it's a good conversation with you, but first I'm a marine after all, and you are pirates. I'm going to arrest you, you'd better do it without your hands." Kuina looked at this girl who looked almost exactly like herself, but the words she said were so simple, she was like a silly white sweet, and she couldn't help but want to laugh. However, he turned his head and glanced at the surrounding marine who raised his guns at him and Nami. Kuina's beautiful brows slightly wrinkled, and said, "I don't like being pointed at a gun, and I also don't like the title pirate." When Kuina finished speaking, Nami, who was standing beside Kuina, glanced playfully at Tashigi opposite, and then said, "I don't like being called pirates. It's just that when he was talking, Nami's pair of beautiful eyes exuded a strange and excited look. Sure enough, the next second, an oppressive aura instantly erupted from Nami's body, sweeping towards the surroundings. Forehead, PFF'd, PFF'd, PFF'd. Immediately, the sound of body falling sounded around, and even Tashigi, who was standing opposite Kuina, pulled Xiaoyi Xiu with a pale face and knelt on the ground, gasping for breath. On the other side, Bolt, Smoker glanced at the surrounding soldiers who fell to the ground and fainted. After getting to know each other, he looked at Nami vigilantly at the same time, and said in shock, "Conqueror's Haki, another ambitious man, must be caught." At this moment, Smoker, Bolt, and the standing marines all charged straight towards Kuina and Nami. Seeing that this group of marines has already started to make a real move, Kuina will also be ready to draw a knife. But at this moment, Nami suddenly stopped in front of Kuina, looked back at Kuina, and asked, "Sister Kuina, this is the first time I've encountered an enemy since I got the inheritance. This time I'll give it to me to practice my hands, how about it?" Kuina looked at Nami who was blocking her, especially her big eyes flashed with excitement, thought for a while, and finally nodded in agreement. Seeing this, Nami's face suddenly burst into a big smile. At this time, Smoker, who had already rushed forward, saw that at this time, Nami and Kuina were actually discussing who would shoot, and could not help but roar a little angrily. "Kuina, Nami, two little girls, don't be too arrogant." White fist. Suddenly, one of Smoker's arms turned into smoke, condensed into a white fist and smashed towards Nami's back. However, Nami didn't seem to react, even when Smoker's white fist was about to hit the body. "You didn't move. What's the matter? Could this Nami just have the Conqueror's Haki, but no other powers?" However, at this moment, Smoker saw that his white fist passed directly through Nami's body, and the place where he was hit by the white fist turned into a ball of lightning flashing. This is the Logia Thunder Fruit ability. Smoker suddenly reacted and shouted to Bogart who was attacking Kuina at the same time, "Be careful, Nami is a thunder fruit capable." At this moment, a sly smile flashed in Nami's eyes, and his body turned into lightning and disappeared from the spot. When she reappeared, she was already behind Bogart, who was holding a knife and planning to cut Kuina down. When looking at Kuina's expressionless pretty face that was close at hand, Bogart, who was also Grandmaster Observation Haki, felt a little nervous in his heart and secretly exclaimed, "Oops." After that, I only had time to cover armament Haki behind my back, and I heard Nami's voice faintly ringing. "Didn't you say it? Your opponent this time is me. 10 million volts, Thunder Beast." Immediately, a dazzling blue-violet electric all-right light formed a fierce thunder beast between the two of them, and slammed into Bogart's back completely. Boom! Crack it! The huge thunder roared, and Bogart himself was directly smashed into the wall of the next house by Nami, the Thunder Beast. Inside the tavern, Zanyu and Garp noticed the fighting outside at the same time. "These idiots, don't you just let them stop and let them run away. Why did you start your own hands?" Garp's heart suddenly felt a little anxious. However, contrary to Garp's anxiety, Zanyu didn't really mean to worry about Kuina and Nami at all, but turned to look at Garp and said, "What a messed up old man. Didn't you say it just now? If you want to fight, we can go to the sea outside to fight." Hearing Zanyu's complaints, Garp was stunned. Then he retracted his fist, touched his short crochet-like silver hair with an embarrassed expression, and laughed loudly. "Ahahaha, I'm sorry, I forgot what you said just now, ha ha ha." After apologizing to Zanyu, Garp shouted directly to the outside of the pub. "Hey, stop fighting outside, don't ruin such a beautiful town. This kid named Zanyu is a bright man. He said that he wants to fight with us at sea outside, then we Marine will give him this face too. It just so happens that we also fight outside Logetown, so as not to damage Logetown, and it will be slow in the future. Repair slowly." Zanyu looked at such a shameless Garp in a speechless manner, and for a while, the thought of having a good fight with Garp faded away. "What do you mean by giving me face?" This old fool clearly realized that Marine was at a disadvantage in the battle with Kuina and Nami outside, so he shouted that on purpose. On the surface, he was telling Marine to stop, and he was going out of Logetown, and he was telling Nami and Kuina secretly that he said he was going to make an appointment at the sea outside Logetown, so don't fight now. It's shameless. In the end, Zanyu still couldn't help but complain. After Garp heard it, he didn't get angry, but laughed. At the same time, he was not at all embarrassed to be seen through his thoughts. Outside the tavern, Nami, who was planning to test his abilities, stopped as expected after hearing Garp's words. After pouting, Nami walked back to Kuina and said with a displeased expression, "Really, people are really having fun." Seeing Nami's unhappy face, Kuina also smiled. Touching Nami's short orange hair, Kuina laughed. "Don't worry, come on, look at this, there will be more hits for a while. Besides, in the sea, isn't your ability capable of bursting damage in a wider range? According to Zanyu, he will freeze the sea out of a battlefield. However, ice is conductive. When you release powerful lightning directly on the ice, the result." Nami's eyes lit up when he heard Kuina's words, and then turned to look at Smoker and the Marine soldiers who had not been stunned by Conqueror's haki. A kind smile suddenly appeared on his pretty little face. "Don't laugh at us like that. Are you all devils? We heard what we said just now." A group of Marine soldiers looked at Nami's smile and couldn't help shivering, and then they roared at Nami and Kuina together. At this time, there was a sound of footsteps behind the smashed wall next to the tavern. Everyone couldn't help looking at the sound, just to see Bogart, who had been hit into the wall by Nami's thunder beast, came out of the hole in the wall. However, the clothes on Bogart's body at this time were somewhat tattered, and at the same time, the original image of a very gentleman completely disappeared, becoming like a refugee. However, it's just that there are hardly any injuries on Bogart's body. If I had to go into detail, the only injury was that Bogart's hair was slightly injured, and it became a little scorched, that's all. When the Marines saw Bogart come out in good condition, they couldn't help shouting with joy. "Sir Bogart is fine. That's great. It's amazing. After taking such a heavy blow, the solution is almost unscathed." As expected of a man who can become the adjutant of the hero Garp, his strength is indeed extraordinary. After Bogart walked out with a blank face, he patted the dust on his body a half, then looked at Nami, who was beside Kuina with a shocked expression, and said, "Thunderfruit's ability is really powerful. Whether it's speed or attack power, it's impossible to react at the next moment. However, in the next battle, I won't be careless anymore." Nami looked at Bogart, who was barely hurt, with a look of surprise and puzzlement, and couldn't help but ask Bogart, "What's the matter? Why are you exposed to 10 million volts of lightning and it seems like you haven't been affected at all?" Bogart. Kuina next to Nami glanced at Bogart and explained to Nami aloud, "That's armament haki, a power that can improve personal attack and defense. The main thing is that with armament haki, you can attack the elementalization of Logia-capable people." After speaking, Kuina took a deep look at Bogart before continuing. "Furthermore, this Marine's armament haki has already cultivated to a very deep level. Combined with that strange defensive body technique, Nami, your attack just now was almost completely defended." After explaining for Nami, Kuina held the meat, looked at Bogart opposite and said, "Hey, what's the name of that body move you just did?" "Marine 6 styles, Iron body, steel. As soon as Bogart's voice fell, everyone saw Zan Yu and Garp walking out of the tavern together. If someone who doesn't know the situation sees this scene, they will never think that these two are actually enemies. Garp, Vice Admiral. Bogart looked at Garp and saluted. Garp nodded, then glanced at the group of Marine soldiers who had fainted on the ground, and turned to Smoker and said, "Leave some people here to take care of the fainted soldiers, and the others go to the sea with the old man to catch the pirates Zan Yu, Kuina, Nami." Standing beside Garp, Zan Yu couldn't help rolling his eyes when he heard Garp's words. Is there such an enemy standing by his side, but instructing his subordinates to arrest the enemy? Then Zan Yu walked towards Kuina, Nami. "Are you all right?" Kuina looked at Zan Yu, shook his head, then turned to Nami, and said, "Nami was shooting just now, I was just watching. But Nami's performance just now was very good." Hearing Kuina's compliment, Nami couldn't help but raised his head at Zan Yu, as if to say that I'm amazing. However, when she looked at Zan Yu, she found that Zan Yu had turned around at this time, and stomped her feet in frustration. However, what Nami didn't know was that Zan Yu, who had his back to her at this moment, had a slight smile on his lips. Outside Logue Town, Bogart, Smoker, and a group of Marine soldiers who followed Garp looked at the whole sea that was frozen by the young man named Zan Yu with a wave of his hand. All of them looked horrified. Is this the freezing ability? Isn't this the ability of Qingshang Admiral? Could it be, there is a second frozen fruit in the world? No, impossible. It should be some unknown zone phantom power. After all, phantom fruits are rarer than Logia fruits, and their abilities are even more bizarre, so you can't say it. Look, the 8 warships we drove over have also been completely frozen. It was originally intended to be used by Kuina and the others to pursue them when they escaped. Fortunately, in order to contain Kuina and the others in Logue Town, they handed over everyone, otherwise, if they were still on the warship. Garp glanced at the frozen sea at this time, and there was ice everywhere as far as his eyes could see. Even under the perception of observation hockey, even the bottom of the sea was frozen. Boy, why does your ice power seem to be stronger than Aokiji's? What the hell are you demon fruit power? When Zan Yu on the side heard Garp asking him what demon fruit power he was, Zan Yu just grinned, and then took Kuina and Nami onto the ice. After entering a few hundred meters on the ice, Zan Yu stopped and turned to look at Garp and a group of Marine soldiers who were also coming over. He smiled and said, "Master Garp, in fact, I suggest that it is better for the two of us to go head to head. After all, no matter how many trash fish there are, they are still trash, and they won't be able to eat sea kings." Hearing Zan Yu's words, the Marine soldiers with guns were taken aback for a moment, and then they became angry. One by one, they glared at Zan Yu across from them, shouting loudly, "Who's the trash fish? We are the elite Marine soldiers who have captured countless pirates. How dare you call us trash?" However, a little boy who has not even grown his hair is too crazy. At this time, Garp waved his hand to stop the angry scolding of the soldiers, looked at Zan Yu and said with a big laugh, "Ha ha ha, Zan Yu boy, did you hear it? As they said, they are not trash fish, but marine elites who have fought against pirates like you countless times in the ocean. Maybe you will be arrested by them today." Really, Zan Yu gave a kind smile as he looked at the Marine soldiers who were glaring at him, and then kept his relaxed look with his hands on Kabuto, without Kaido. "Kina, since they say they're elite, test them with your conqueror's haki." Zan Yu's voice fell, and Kuina, who was coughing with a meat shizuku in one hand behind him, nodded. Immediately afterwards, a powerful and oppressive aura like Shira suddenly erupted from Kuina's body, forming an almost substantial purple-black light that expanded wildly in all directions. Wherever the purple light passes, the ice layer on the surface of the sea that was originally frozen by Zan Yu appears cracked. Whoa whoa whoa. For the opposite, Garp, Bogart, and Smoker watched this scene and exclaimed instantly. Another Conqueror's Haki owner. And compared to the previous Nami, Kuina's Conqueror's Haki is more than one level stronger. Oops. When he thought about it like this, the purple-black light that seemed to come out of Shira's hell directly bypassed everyone. Garp was indifferent and even cocked his nose. At this time, Bogart raised the danger level of the 3 Zan Yu in front of him once again. As soon as Smoker turned his head, he saw the other marine soldiers who were still holding guns, their eyes widening, and they fainted on the ground. Secretly in my heart, fortunately, Tashigi was arranged to take care of the soldiers who passed out before, otherwise that stupid woman will pass out here this time. Just as Smoker was thinking, Zanyu's voice came again. It seems that the so-called marine elite is nothing more than that. But it's just right now, 3-on-3, can you start playing? Zanyu's voice fell, and Nami, who was behind him, jumped out at this moment, looked at Bogart standing beside Garp, and said, It's you. I just ate this girl's thunderbolt and there was no response. I'm not convinced. Come, let's fight again. The opposite Bogart heard the words and stood up without saying a word. Seeing this, Kuina's expression changed slightly. Just when he was about to organize, Zanyu really turned his head, his eyes stopped Kuina's plan, and said, since he wants to be one of the 12 cavalry of the Dark Moon, to stand at the top and look down on all beings, then Nami must have a record of keeping everyone down. Although this Bogart in front of me is only Garp's adjutant, he definitely has the strength to be a candidate for the Naval Headquarters Award. It's barely enough to be used as a stepping stone to Nami's fame. Hearing this, Kuina said with some concern. But Nami's strength. Don't underestimate Nami. Zanyu glanced at the confident Nami, then smiled mysteriously at Kuina. Nami is very cunning. With her character, she won't do anything she is not sure about, don't worry. However, that Smoker will be handed over to you, but don't kill it. Smoker, a real marine with a code of justice, just beat him. After speaking, Zanyu also left the place and shouted to Garp opposite. Mr. Garp, come on, let me see how powerful the rumored Garp the Fist really is. After speaking, Zanyu's legs suddenly forced, and instantly disappeared in place. On the other hand, Garp also disappeared in an instant without Smoker seeing it. The next second, 300 meters away on the right, a huge roar suddenly sounded. Boom, taste beef. Smoker turned his head to look subconsciously, and saw the fists of Garp and Zanyu colliding in the distance. And the ice surface under the two fists actually split a huge hole directly under the collision of Zanyu and Garp's fists. It stretched for thousands of meters. Are these two people monsters? Smoker is stunned at all of this. Rao is also from the Naval Headquarters elite class, but have you ever seen a fist-to-fist collision that can tear apart thousands of meters of cracks in the ice that is even stronger than the earth? And at this moment, Kuina's voice suddenly came forward. Before fighting with me, you dared to be distracted and look elsewhere. Are you looking down on me? On the other hand, the battle between Nami and Bogart has also begun. Sister Kuina said that your defensive ability is very strong, but I don't know if you can guard against this move. Saying that, Nami pulled out a golden metal rod out of nowhere. Bogart on the opposite side saw this, and his face was also very solemn. After all, as we all know, Thunder Fruit, even among the devil fruit Logia known as the strongest devil fruit, is truly the top and most invincible batch. In terms of practicality alone, few devil fruit can compare with it. Even among the Marines' three major Logia fruit power monsters, Admiral, recognized by the sea today, only Kizaru Admiral's sparkling fruit ability can compare with it. Even the 30 million volts attack, Thunder Beast, didn't cause any substantial damage to him, but the speed that 3 people can't deal with is very big in the first place. Trouble. And now watching Nami pull out another metal root, Bogart has to be careful. Suddenly, Bogart noticed that Nami's hands holding the metal had sparks of sparkling, as if charging the metal roots, and his expression suddenly condensed, secretly said, "Is coming." At this time, Nami suddenly stuck out a small tongue towards Bogart, and then without waiting for Bogart to react, he directly raised the metal stick glowing with electric light in his right hand and shouted, "Look, this girl can't break your defense. 50 million volts. Thunder gun." Nami instantly threw the metal stick in his hand towards Bogart. The moment the metal rod leaves Nami's little hand, the surrounding space is full of thunder and lightning. And on the metal rod, a tyrannical thunder and lightning suddenly erupted, echoing the surrounding thunder and lightning. At this moment, the metal rod seems to have turned into a thunder gun, carrying a thunderbolt, and shooting straight towards Bogart at a speed that is difficult to track with the naked eye. So fast. Bogart looked at the thunderbolt gun that had come to him in an instant, and thought to himself, blessing this metal stick at the speed of lightning, combined with the tyrannical piercing force of lightning, even if it is my armament hockey and iron body, it is impossible to defend against this move. Don't shake it. Hide. Bogart deserves to be a person who can be an adjutant by Garp's side. His countless battle experience directly judges the tyranny of Nami's move, and he doesn't go head to head at all. I saw a flash of red in Bogart's eyes. Seeing the go here Marine 6 styles shave, Bogart's body instantly disappeared in place. It was also at this moment that a violent explosion occurred in the place where Bogart was originally located. Boom! The ice debris in the sky was splashing around at this moment, and the ice surface was directly blasted into a semicircular pit with a radius of nearly 50 meters. At the lowest point of the pit, a golden yellow metal rod is inserted straight into the ice. At this time, Bogart just appeared on the edge of this big pit. He turned his head and glanced at the big hole around him, especially the depth of 50 meters. Rauyi Bogart's tenacious heart couldn't help but tremble at this time, and his expressionless face unconsciously flowed out a cold sweat. What a terrible destructive power! Bogart screamed in his heart. At this time, Nami's slightly naughty voice came again. Hey, uncle, do you think my trick is so easy to end? Hearing Nami's words, Bogart's eyes opened slightly. He turned his head and looked down at the pit. Sure enough, I found that the golden metal rod that had been inserted into the ice flashed once again. Crackling. Immediately afterwards, the metal rod flew out of the ice instantly under Bogart's gaze, locked itself again in an instant, and burst out. What? Bogart couldn't help but exclaimed in shock, and subconsciously resorted to restraint again. Boom, boom, boom. However, as for how Bogart dodged next, the metal stick that came with the thunder like a gun of thunder could always aim at Bogart again and again to chase after him, giving Bogart no extra time at all. After escaping the metal rod's shot a few times, Bogart, who was already panting a little, inadvertently glanced at Nami, who was standing in the distance, looking at the embarrassed look on his face with great interest, as if he was watching a monkey show. At this moment, Bogart's calm personality can't help but want to vomit blood. However, at this time, Bogart suddenly found that Nami's right index finger hanging on his side was waving secretly. The most important thing, on that slender index finger, there is a flash of lightning. Could it be that she is manipulating this metal rod? Bogart immediately reacted. At the beginning, when she was holding this metal rod, she moved her hands and feet. Although there are still some who do not understand the specific reasons, but Bogart instantly thought of a way to deal with it. Close up. These two words appeared directly in Bogart's mind, and in the next second, Bogart flew directly towards Nami on moonwalk. Huh, did you find out so soon? Nami's face was a little surprised, but then he returned to his previous laughing appearance, and said with a smile. Hee hee, what if you find out? Could it be, do you think your speed can keep up with me? While speaking, Nami's body turned into a thunderbolt, and before the fist covered by Bogart armament hockey came, he disappeared in place. After Bogart cursed in a low voice, Observation Hockey noticed the annoying metal root behind him rushing towards him again, and hurriedly chose to chase after the thunderbolt transformed by Nami. Do not moonwalk. At the moment when Bogart left, there was no doubt that a big hole was left in place. After that, Nami turned into thunder and lightning to dodge around like a joke, but he didn't give Bogart a chance to get close. At this moment, Boga did not dare to stop at all except chasing Nami. For a while, the two of you chased me on the ice like this. Of course, at the same time, there are deep pits on the ice. On the other side, Zhan Yu slid nearly 100 meters back on the ice after he faced Garp, especially when he felt the boundless force from his fist that was harder than sea stone, like a falling meteor. After that, he stomped his foot suddenly and stepped deeply under the ice with his right foot, which stopped the retreating trend. At this time, behind Zhan Yu, the tens of thousands of square meters of ice surface directly shattered into small ice cubes. Zhan Yu looked up at Garp in the distance, his expression changed slightly, and he whispered. What a tyrannical force! Is this the power of Garp the Fist? Zhan Yu marveled at Garp's terrifying power in his heart, but not at this time. Garp was also amazed at Zhan Yu's power. Turning his head to look at the pieces of crushed ice that are also nearly 10,000 square meters behind him, Garp turned his head to look at Zhan Yu, secretly said. This boy is so powerful. And his armament hockey. Garp glanced at his fist, then looked at Zhan Yu again and shouted. Boy, you are good. Come again. Saying that, Garp's feet pressed hard again, and his body instantly disappeared from the spot. And 3 seconds after Garp disappeared, the place where Garp stood before made a boom explosion, and then the ice surface with a radius of 30 or 40 meters directly shattered into white ice chips. Zhan Yu heard Garp's words, his ruby-red eyes rarely raised a fiery war, and he also shouted. I can't ask for it. Zhan Yu's body also instantly disappeared in place. After a second, Zhan Yu and Garp appeared again, and the fists of the two armament hockey, who were also wrapped in black and almost gasping, collided again. The huge air wave generated by the collision of the two fists directly blew the clothes of the two. Ha ha ha, boy, you should use your devil fruit ability, or draw your knife. You can't touch this old man with your fists. The old man smashed 8 mountains to pieces for the sake of this pair of iron fists. At the same time, Garp punched Zhan Yu again. Upon seeing this, Zhan Yu had no intention of retreating at all, and also punched him in the face. Another loud bang sounded out of thin air. Zhan Yu then looked at Garp and said with great fighting spirit. Have you smashed 8 mountains? But, old man, do you know that since I was 8 years old, I have also been swimming in the sea with one mountain after another cut by me. In terms of fists and strength, why should I fear you? During the conversation, the two collided with their fists hundreds of times. Garp's eyes lit up when he heard Zhan Yu's words. I didn't expect that there are still people in this era who cultivate their bodies like this. Boy, you are very good. However, if what you said is true, let the old man test it now. As he said that, the almost vaporized armament hockey on Garp's fist instantly disappeared. Armament hockey, stream spoiler. Seeing this scene, Zhan Yu also shouted. Emission hockey. Boom, boom boom. In the distance, Kuina folded his arms and stepped on Smoker, who had passed out. Hearing this series of loud noises, he couldn't help turning his head to look over. It turned out that the place where Zhan Yu and Garp fought was like an avalanche, shrouded in extremely thick ice and snow. Kuina's eyes also flickered with this fighting intent, looking at the land of ice chips where the huge sound of fists and feet colliding from time to time, she muttered to herself. It's like fighting with them. However, it seems that Zhan Yu also had a good time playing today. After speaking, Kuina stopped looking there, and turned to look at another battlefield. In the icy sky, Garp once again fought Zhan Yu, and then the two couldn't help but take 4 or 5 steps back at the same time. Garp looked at Zhan Yu, who was full of fighting spirit, and couldn't help sighing for a while. Obviously possessing such a tyrannical strength and such a tenacious will, why would you go down the evil path and become a pirate? If you join Marine and join the side of justice, you may become a new Marine Admiral in a few years, or even become a Marine Marshal in the future. The old man will not have any surprises. Zhan Yu heard the words, a trace of disdain flashed in his ruby-red eyes, and said. When did I say I'm a pirate? Just because I killed a scumbag who wanted to rob Kuina, and by the way gave me to some earl's wife in the Goa kingdom to benefit myself. Obviously possessing such strength, is it right to let me and Kuina be taken away without resisting? In this way, your so-called justice is simply not true, and the pirates who do all evil are disgusting. Garp looked at Zhan Yu's contempt and disgust, and immediately shouted. Who would arrest you for such rubbish? Speaking of which, I heard Sengoku talk about this matter, and the old man once thanked you for saving a great deal of harm for the civilians of the Goa kingdom. But, why did you kill the marine soldiers on the mission the other day? Even leaving them dead? Are you planning to take revenge on Marine for being wanted? It is impossible for this old man to allow you to continue taking revenge for such a serious crime. After listening to Garp's words, Zhan Yu burst into laughter for a while. Old Garp, I admired you a little before, but now it seems that you are nothing more than that. You actually open your eyes and talk nonsense. Do you know what those Marines who were burned to ashes by Kuina 3 days ago did? Joining the evil dragon pirates to oppress dozens of villages including Kokoyashi village for more than 10 years. Do you know how many civilians have died at the hands of the dragon pirates in the past 10 years? How many times have civilians asked your Marine for advice? You know how desperate they are when they don't get help from the righteous Marine they trust time and time again. Do you know why those Marines never take the initiative to exterminate the dragon pirates? Do you know how much Bailey the Righteous Marine receives from the dragon pirates every year? Righteous Marine. Ah. After listening to Zan Yu's rhetorical question, Garp was stunned. Especially the sarcasm in the last sentence, disdain, disgust, disgust. Directly Garp changed his face, looked at Zan Yu in disbelief, and said, How is this possible? Hearing Garp's questioning, Zan Yu snorted coldly. Humph, don't believe me, you'll find out when you check it out. Besides, at your level of strength, do you think it is necessary for me to lie to you? Garp's expression changed several times when he heard the words, but it could be seen that he already believed Zan Yu's words. After all, what Zan Yu said is not wrong. For a strong person at their level, is a bit embarrassed to lie and lose his identity. At this time, Garp had lost his previous determination. After several changes in his face, Garp looked at Zan Yu and said seriously, If what you said is true, you old man can come to thank you. At the same time, the old man invited you to join Marine. As for the wanted list before you and Kuina, the old man can assure you that it will be taken back by Sengoku. I heard what you said before, and the old man also heard it. You also hate those evil pirates. How about you, do you want to gradually enter the Marine and exterminate all the pirates? Zan Yu looked a little strange when he heard Garp's words, and said, If first do join Marine, will I have my own warship? When Garp heard the change in Zan Yu's words, he was overjoyed at the moment. Although he felt that the surprise came a bit suddenly, he didn't think much about it, and laughed directly and cheerfully. Joining Marine with your strength will give you at least a vice admiral position, and of course you will have your own exclusive warship. Zan Yu was overjoyed when he heard this, and then asked, Is there a nautical chart on it? In order to recruit Zan Yu, Garp was not suspicious, but thought that Zan Yu was interested in warships, so he made a big introduction. Of course, in order to catch pirates, each warship is not only equipped with nautical charts covering almost the entire sea's known islands, but also equipped with our navigators. Zheng Huan, who was introduced by Garp, didn't notice a glint in Zan Yu's eyes. At this moment, Zan Yu and Garp simultaneously heard the sound of endless thunder from another battlefield in the distance. Both of them turned their heads and saw Nami jumping into the sky, and above Nami's head, a group of extremely huge thunderclouds gathered together, and the lightning flashed between the clouds, like another big sun. Light shines on the entire battlefield. Nami looked at Bogart, who also jumped into the air below, and said coquettishly, Uncle, this time, the ground was blown into a big pit by my thunder gun, and in the sky, you are like a lightning rod, and you can't avoid lightning at all. I see you running there this time. Saying that, Nami raised his hand, and the metal frame that was chasing Bogart automatically flew back to Nami's hand. Nami, who was holding a metal stick, pointed at Bogart, whose complexion had changed drastically in midair, and shouted, Try this girl's trick, 100 million volts, Thunder Emperor. As Nami's voice fell, the incomparably huge thunder light group above his head seemed to be commanded by the metal root in Nami's hand, and slammed into Bogart, who couldn't react at all, at a speed close to the speed of light. No, Bogart only had time to wrap all the armed colors around himself, and before he could react, he was directly wrapped by this huge thunder group. Breakthrough. Garp in the distance looked at this scene, and his expression changed immediately. Then he rushed towards the thunder group in an instant. With such an attack strength, even he himself is not sure what to do next. As Bogart has been his adjutant for many years, Garp naturally knows how strong he is. After such a blow, Bogart will at least be seriously injured. And when Garp moved, Zan Yu moved at the same time. A huge ice dragon with a length of 1,000 meters suddenly formed under Zan Yu's feet. And the tail of the ice dragon directly rolls up a warship in the distance, and lifts off with it. At the same time, Zan Yu shouted at Kuina and Nami. Come up. The tacit understanding that has been cultivated by living together for many years makes Kuina Zan Yu understand the meaning of Zan Yu the moment he leaves, and he jumps directly behind the ice dragon. Although Nami didn't have the same tacit understanding as Kuina, after hearing Zan Yu's words, he still turned into thunder and came to Kuina's side in the blink of an eye. All these changes were completed in less than a second, and even Garp didn't react. However, the huge thunderbolt had dissipated at this time, and Bogart's figure also appeared in Garp's line of sight at this time. At this time, Bogart can be described as miserable. All the clothes on the whole body were tattered by the thunder and lightning, and many of the exposed skin seemed to be scorched. Seeing Bogart's appearance, Garp didn't care what the three of Zhan Yu were doing, so he went directly to Bogart and grabbed Bogart's arm. It was Garp's rude grab that made Bogart, who had already been completely stunned by the thunder and lightning, wake up in pain for a moment. Hiss. However, after waking up, Bogart only left a painful sound of air conditioning, and then he fainted again due to the pain. What? So it's all right. Looking at this scene, Garp didn't apologize at all, instead he patted Bogart's shoulder with another hand and laughed loudly. As expected of Bogart, who has been fighting with the old man for many years, this body. Garp didn't notice at all. The face of Bogart, who had passed by, was subconsciously wrinkled by his slaps. The blue veins on his face were stabbed a few times from time to time. Looking up, Garp looked at the huge ice dragon that almost covered the sky in the sky, then looked at Zhan Yu and shouted. Boy, didn't you say you wanted to join Marine? What are you doing now? Could it be, you kid was cheating on the old man just now? Standing on top of the ice dragon, Zhan Yu looked down at the gray-haired Garp below and laughed loudly. Mr. Garp, I'm afraid that what I just said was, if, and I didn't say that first must join Marine. Garp was instantly pissed off and scolded. Well, you sly boy, you actually play word games with this old man. However, if what you said before is true, the old man can vouch for you and make you and Kuina innocent. Why don't you join Marine? Garp really appreciates Zhan Yu from the bottom of his heart. Whether it is the initiative to come here to fight before the battle, not to destroy the Logue town, or the fighting style that is as hard as himself during the battle, Garp appreciates it very much. Coupled with that terrifying strength, Garp really doesn't want Zhan Yu to go astray in the future. In the sky, Zhan Yu heard Garp's words, smiled and shouted. Why do I have to prove to others that I have acted in my life? Who can condemn me? When they said this, Kuina and Nami had already come to Zhan Yu's side. And Zhan Yu then continued. Originally, I planned to keep a low profile, but since it has been exposed today, then. Master Garp, allow me to introduce myself again. I, Zhan Yu, a man who wants to be the king of the gods, standing in the palace of heaven and looking down on all beings. Next, I will set up the Dark Moon 12 riders, and each of them will have the power of a god. Kuina, Nami is the first and second ride. In the next time, I will continue to find the other 10 riders, Mr. Garp, you, Sengoku, Marine, and even the world government, as well as those celestial dragons who have been sitting on the throne for 800 years. If you have to stop me, try your best. Ha ha ha. Laughing loudly, the ice dragon suddenly lifted into the air under the control of Zhan Yu. The wind blew the hair of Zhan Yu, Kuina, and Nami wildly. But at this time, the straight, confident, haughty, and proud backs of the three of them left Garp with a deep and unforgettable memory. In an instant, the ice dragon disappeared into the sky with 3 people plus a warship. In the sky, only Zhan Yu's unbridled laughter is still circling, as if it's going to reverberate in this space. Garp looked up at the backs of Zhan Yu, who had disappeared, and was shocked for a long time, unable to return to his senses. However, what neither Zhan Yu nor Garp had noticed was that, somewhere outside Logue town, somewhere on the corner of the wooden bridge in the port, a special phone bug had quietly watched all this develop from the very beginning. On the broken ice outside Logue town, Garp was stunned for an hour before slowly regaining his senses. A guy who wants to subvert a god. Yay, a guy who wants to be a new god. With such ambition, it's no wonder that 2 strong men with conqueror's haki can be subdued. It seems that this time, the whole sea is really going to be turned upside down. After speaking, Garp carried Bogart to Smoker not far away, raised Smoker with one hand, then turned and walked towards Logue town. But in the air, there was a faint whisper. However, Kid Zhan Yu, I hope you succeed. More than 10 minutes later, Garp returned to the marine base in Logue town and arranged for the crew to be carried back to the marine soldiers who were stunned by Kuina Conqueror's haki outside Logue town. After Bogart and Smoker were both wounded, Garp called Naval Headquarters phone bug. Mosamoxie. When Garp heard the call connected, he said, I'm Garp, hand over the phone bug to Sengoku, the old man has something important to call him. As ordered, General Garp. Hearing Garp's voice, a soldier's respectful answer came from the other side of the phone bug. A few minutes later, the phone worm rang again. Hey, Garp, I'm Sengoku, what's the matter? Did you catch Kuina? Looking at the relaxed appearance of Sengoku with frog eyes on the phone bug, Garp took a deep breath and said seriously. No, Sengoku, I failed. Garp's voice fell, and Sengoku's expression was obviously taken aback from the phone bug. Then came the inconceivable way. What, Garp, you said you failed. You old fool wouldn't let it go again, would you? You don't know how many righteous Marine soldiers will be slaughtered in the future if you let such criminals go. Like. When Sengoku wanted to say something in the phone bug, Garp slapped the table and yelled at the phone bug. Shut up, Sengoku. If you don't know anything, don't talk nonsense. It's obviously that Marine resident gang colluded with the immediate group of pirates to oppress the countless local people, and the result was not open to the election of Zan Yu, Kuina. They will be slaughtered. Speaking of which, Garp was at a loss for words, then sat down on the chair again, took a few deep breaths, and then continued. However, the problem is not the marine frogs that were killed, it's that we are now in serious trouble. Marineford, Naval Headquarters, in the Marshal's office, Sengoku was yelled at by Garp, and he also realized that Garp was in a wrong state at this time. However, Sengoku still noticed what Garp said before. The marine worms colluded with the immediate group of pirates to oppress countless local people, and as a result, they chose Zan Yu, Kuina and the others would be slaughtered, is also slightly relieved. This proves that Kuina's revenge against Marine was wrong. Now that Kuina isn't planning to get revenge on Marine, it's not a big deal. As for the Marine who colluded with the pirates, if they die, they will die. Anyway, it's not a big deal. How many people will not die in this sea? Thinking of this, Sengoku's magic relaxed a bit, and then smiled at the phone and said. Since Kuina didn't deliberately oppose our Marine, then forget it. This time you let the water go and let Kuina go, the old man will not pursue it. Yes, in Sengoku's eyes, Garp must have spared Kuina, otherwise Kuina could not have escaped. No, Sengoku, now there is something that is a million times more troublesome than Kuina's revenge against Marine. As soon as Sengoku's voice fell, Garp's voice came from the phone bug. Hearing this, Hongguo looked stunned for a moment, and then became serious. This is the second time that Garp has mentioned the word, trouble, which is enough to prove that something bad happened. What the hell happened? Sengoku asked the phone bug seriously. We've been ignoring. No, we've underestimated someone. Zan Yu, do you remember that name? Hearing Garp's question from the phone bug, Sengoku frowned for a while, and said. Is that the little white face who offered a reward of 100 Bailey? Isn't he Kuina's little follower? Sengoku's voice fell, followed by Garp's voice from the phone bug. No, that's a real strong man. At least in physical skills, he can compete with the old man. Before Sengoku was shocked, Garp's voice came again. Moreover, he also has a superb ice control technique. At least in my opinion, his ability to control ice is definitely better than Kuzan. More than that, he's the real leader of Kuina's gang. By the way, Kuina is also the owner of Conqueror's Hockey. Also, Zan Yu found a little girl named Nami from there, who is not only the Logia Thunder Fruit person, but also the owner of Conqueror's Hockey. Also, according to Zan Yu, he still has to look for a strong man like Kuina and Nami to form some kind of Dark Moon 12 Riders, that is an organization that belongs to the gods and stands above all living beings. Sengoku was so shocked by Garp's news after another that he was speechless, especially after listening to the last sentence. Sengoku stood up suddenly, his face was dignified and was about to drip out of water. Staring at the phone bug, Sengoku said, Garp, tell this story as it is. Hearing this, Garp was not surprised by Sengoku's order, and then started to tell the story from the tavern. 10 minutes later, Sengoku listened to Garp's entire narration, and his brows were already together. Want to be the king of the gods? Form an organization of gods? How dare he? This is a blatant challenge to Marine's authority. It is a challenge to the authority of the world government. He dares to provoke celestial dragons. Doesn't he fear the whole world will be in chaos? Can't he imagine how many people will die because of his actions? It's just crazy, it's just a lunatic. Even Roger didn't dare to do this. Even Rox only wanted to overthrow the world government. He actually wants to be the king of the gods. In East Blue Log Town, Marine Branch Base, Garp listened to Sengoku's roar on the other side of the phone, and just picked his nostrils indifferently. However, the next moment, Sengoku's face suddenly became serious among the phone bugs, and he said, "Garp, no one else knows about this." Hearing this, Cope continued to hold his nose and said, "The priority of this matter, the old man, is still light. There is absolutely no one else except the old man. After all, before the official fight, the others were knocked out by the little girl named Kuina's Conqueror's Hockey. Later, Smoker and Bogart were also seriously injured and passed out, and there was no one else." After listening to Garp's assurance, Sengoku, who was opposite the phone bug, breathed a sigh of relief and said, "That's okay. After all, the words and thoughts of this guy named Zanyu are too dangerous." Dong dong dong. Marineford, in the Marine Headquarters Marshal's office, while Sengoku was talking, there was a sudden knock on the door. Before Sengoku could answer, the door was pushed open and Vice Admiral Crane walked in with a stack of newspapers. The only person who can walk into the Marshal's office without consent is Garp, and the only one is the Crane Vice Admiral. "Xiaohei, you're here." Sengoku looked at the Crane Vice Admiral who walked in, adjusted his mood, and then said, "You came just in time, and it happened that I had an important matter." While Sengoku was talking, Vice Admiral Crane came to Sengoku's desk, put the newspaper in his hand directly in front of Sengoku, and said with a serious expression, "I suggest you look at this just released paper before you talk about other things." Hearing this, Sengoku glanced at Crane suspiciously, and then turned his gaze to the newspaper on the table. What caught my eye was a large photo with an ice blue long dragon covering the sky and the sun, and on top of the long dragon's head, 3 figures stood straight and looked unusually haughty. Perhaps it is because of the shooting angle. In the photo, the sun shines on the ice dragon at this moment, reflecting the colorful divine light, making the ice dragon look like a legendary dragon. And in the same way, the 3 figures standing on the top of the dragon's head, under the background of this colorful light, look like gods who have just descended to earth. So dazzling, so noble, so invisible. In contrast to the 3 dazzling figures, in one corner of the photo, Garp, wearing a marine justice coat, was staring at the dragon and the 3 figures in the sky with a dull expression, as if he was shocked. What is even more exaggerated is that right above this huge photo, there is a very large space dedicated to writing the title, "Shock." 1 man and 2 women actually do this kind of thing in public. The hero Garp is silent when he sees it. Seeing this, Sengoku's brows beat fiercely several times. At the same time of anger, a bad premonition gradually came to his heart. However, he still endured his anger and carefully read the article in the newspaper. After a minute, Sengoku directly picked up the phone bug that hadn't hung up, and roared frantically, "Garp, you old fool, you still swore to me that no one else would know about this, now. Ah. You fool, do you know that this incident was watched by an unknown fool reporter the whole time? I even took several pictures. You immortal, now all the events have been reported by the newspapers. You told me to guarantee that no one will know. You old fool can't even be found when someone takes a picture. Do you want to take a break and rest? Huh." Garp has already been caught by Sengoku's frenzied spray painting, but when he heard the last sentence, "It's a good holiday," Garp's eyes lit up, and the music came from the phone immediately, saying, "Okay, just this is the case. I have been busy for a few days and have no time to see my grandson, so I miss my good grandson a little bit." Sengoku listened to Garp's laughter on the phone, and he was so angry that he almost spit out a mouthful of blood. At this time, it was the Crane Vice Admiral who looked at Sengoku, who was very angry and persuaded. "Sengoku, now is not the time to investigate Garp for accidentally being photographed, but to think about how to solve this problem next." Saying that, Crane Vice Admiral took a sip of tea and continued. "Also, how to deal with those from the world government." Crane Vice Admiral was talking when a special phone bug suddenly rang on Sengoku's desk. Looking at the phone bug, Crane Vice Admiral stopped what she was about to say. When Sengoku saw the phone worm ringing, a hint of helplessness flashed across his face, and he sorted out his thoughts before picking up the phone. "Mosamoshi, this is Sengoku." Immediately afterwards, the phone bug suddenly changed into the facial shape of an old man with a pair of round rimless glasses. The old man's eyes seemed to contain these 2 sharp swords, and the skin of the person's face was sore when stabbed. At this time, the old man finally spoke up. Sengoku, you must know what happened just now, right? The old man's voice was neither sad nor happy, as if nothing could make him lose his temper. Hearing this, Sengoku immediately replied, Lord Five Elders, I already know what happened. Hearing Sengoku's words, the old man on the phone nodded, and then said, well, since you already know, then arrest this arrogant ignorant as soon as possible. Celestial Dragons is very dissatisfied with the remarks of this lawless person. Sengoku, don't let me down. Listening to the old man's words, Sengoku nodded immediately and said, I will arrest Zanyu and others in the shortest possible time and send them to Impel Down. The old man on the other side of the phone nodded after hearing Sengoku's assurance, and then continued. Since that's the case, then leave it to you, Sengoku. By the way, Sengoku, go and warn this newspaper that they shouldn't report anything they shouldn't report in the future. Yes, with Sengoku's answer, the phone worm was hung up on the other side. Seeing that the phone was hung up, Sengoku also sat directly on the chair behind him, looked up at Crane Vice Admiral, and said helplessly. Sure enough, it was confirmed by Xiaohei again. As expected, the Holy Land saw this newspaper, Celestial Dragons, World Government, Five Elders, everyone was shocked, and now they are urging us. Xiaohei, what should we do now? You can talk about it first. Chapter 71. Hearing Sengoku's words, Suru Vice Admiral didn't refuse, put down the teacup in his hand, and began to say. I think the first thing we should do, as the person said, is to minimize the impact of this matter and prevent the continued outflow of newspapers, and this matter, when I saw this newspaper, had already hit the ground running. The phone bug warned the newspaper. And they, at this time, are only sending out the newspapers that have sold the first batch of production shares. These newspapers that have been sold can't be recycled now, but the ones scattered on the sea are only the first batch of shares. Obviously, now there is no need to worry about the influence of this matter expanding. Sengoku's eyes lit up when he heard the words of Suru Vice Admiral. Thumbs up at the Crane Vice Admiral, Sengoku's face finally turned a little bit, and said. It's still Xiaohei, you are reliable and thoughtful. This time, the influence is finally reduced. 3, 4, 7, so what's next? Xiaohei, you continue. Quote. Crane Vice Admiral heard the words, nodded, then looked a little dignified, and then said. The next things, it's time for Zanyu, Kuina, and Nami to be wanted. Hearing Vice Admiral Crane talking about the wanted order, Sengoku also frowned. He has not forgotten the misunderstanding caused by the wanted order before. Although the last time was a misunderstanding, who can guarantee that the next time will also be a misunderstanding? If it arouses the revenge of those murderous and terrifying guys. Thinking of this, Sengoku suddenly froze for a moment, and then he remembered, Marine, when are you afraid of pirates' revenge? Don't the pirates run away when they see Marine like a mouse sees a cat? Thinking of this question, Sengoku looked at the newspaper on the table again. The guy above is the first time that he and Xiaohei have such hearts. Shaking his head, Sengoku threw these temporarily irrelevant thoughts out of his mind, and then turned his attention to the phone bug that hadn't hung up with Garp. Picking up the phone bug, Sengoku said, Garp, now you are the only person who has had direct contact with those three people, tell me your evaluation of their strength. Garp. Sengoku looked at the silent phone bug, frowned, and said again. Garp, Garp. Sengoku frowned even more, picked up the phone bug and shouted loudly at the phone bug's communication port. Hey, Garp, Garp, whore. Hearing faintly the snoring sound coming from the opposite side of the phone bug, Sengoku couldn't help but subconsciously squeeze the phone bug with both hands, and the veins on his forehead throbbed violently. Garp. Immediately, the entire naval headquarters heard the roar of Sengoku. Surprised, countless marine soldiers were talking, each and everyone guessing what game Marshal Sengoku was playing with Garp Vice Admiral. In Marshal Marine's office, Sengoku looked at the phone bug in his hand, whose eyes were rolling in circles when he was shocked by his shouting, and slapped it in the corner of the table in annoyance. That old fool Garp, he's just fallen asleep after all the trouble. Timo's snoring. The old man has never snored in his sleep. The problem is so serious, he can't sleep. It's impossible to ask anything, old fool. Sengoku scolded and sat down and took another deep breath. After calming down, he turned to Vice Admiral who was drinking tea and said, "Although the old Garp can't be contacted now, when he told me about what happened before, Garp still shared some information that was shown in the battle. First of all, let's talk about this orange-haired girl who just joined Zan Yu's gang. The name is Nami. The exact age is not known yet, but from the photos, she should be a little younger than Zan Yu and Kuina. And during her battle with Bogart, she showed a very strong observation haki. At the same time, Nami should also be the Logia Thunder Fruit ability, and from the fact that she defeated Bogart to the point of being seriously injured and unconscious, Nami's development of Thunder Fruit has reached a very deep level. Also, Nami is the owner of a Conqueror's Haki. Therefore, according to the preliminary judgment, Nami has at least the strength of Admiral's backup, and even the strength of Admiral of the headquarters. Speaking of this, Sengoku's expression was undoubtedly a little heavy, and even Suru Vice Admiral, who was drinking tea, put down his teacup at this time, and his expression was extremely solemn. Every owner of Conqueror's Haki will not be an unknown person on this sea in the end, they are destined to stir up a storm on this sea. Not to mention the owner of Conqueror's Haki who almost has the power of Admiral of the headquarters. After a slight pause, Sengoku continued to introduce. The object of Kuina's fight is Smoker. Listening to Garp's request, losing too fast, Garp did not notice Kuina's specific strength, but, one thing is the same as Nami, Kuina is also the owner of Conqueror's Haki, and on Haki strength, Kuina's Conqueror's rating is above Nami. Speaking of which, Rao Shijin had some headaches. Although the owners of Conqueror's Haki in this world are not very rare, but in the new world, East Blue, such a barren and weak sea area, two Conqueror's Haki owners have appeared one after another, and they even got together. Just thinking about it makes my scalp go numb. However, Sengoku calmed down, and then looked a little more dignified than before, and then said. The last one, the boy we ignored before, Zan Yu. Known ability, ability to control ice, super physical technique, emission armament Haki. According to Garp, Zan Yu's ability to control ice is still better than Kuzan, and this can be seen from the ice dragon in the photo. And his physical skills can fight head-to-head with Garp for hundreds of rounds without losing. As for emission Haki, we all know it. So, with the power Zan Yu has shown so far, he can almost be called a Four Emperors level powerhouse. Speaking of which, even Sengoku couldn't help but sigh for a while. No wonder, this guy dares to say he wants to become the king of the gods, and now the small group of three of them has the strength to challenge any new world Four Emperors. Regarding Sengoku's emotion, Crane Vice Admiral also nodded by default. Then looking at Sengoku, Suru Vice Admiral said, So Sengoku, how are you going to write the reward order this time? Sengoku heard the words, thought for a moment, and then said. The reward amount for Zan Yu, Kuina, and Nami is set to be 1.5 billion Bailey, 1.2 billion Bailey, and 1 billion Bailey. As for the title, said this, Sengoku glanced at the newspaper on the table, and there was a comment on it that Zan Yu was a god who fell into the mortal world and intends to return to the heaven. Sengoku's eyes lit up, and he continued. Since this Zan Yu wants to be the king of the gods, then this old man will fulfill him. However, this god is an evil god, a fallen god, Lucifer. From now on, Zan Yu's trombone will be called Lucifer, Zan Yu. The first rider of the Dark Moon, Kuina. Second rider of the Dark Moon, Nami. Some things, people who should know, will know. Although Vice Admiral Crane had already warned the newspaper company early, not to continue printing and selling this special newspaper, both the Four Emperors and Shichibukai have basically obtained all the information. Never underestimate the energy possessed by a real big pirate, whether it is strength or intelligence. Dressrosa, Don Quixote da Flamingo, known as Heavenly Yaksha by the world, looked at the newspaper in his hand, and the corner of his mouth gradually cracked into a crazy smile. Foo. Interesting, just so interesting. Da Flamingo threw away the newspaper in his hand and couldn't help laughing up to the sky. Foo. Someone is already dissatisfied with the celestial dragons occupying that seat. Is it going to step on the celestial dragons to re-enter the throne of God? It's interesting, it's really interesting. Want to form an organization with strength comparable to the gods. The 12 Knights of the Dark Moon. Kuina, the first rider, the unparalleled swordsman, Nami, who owns the second rider, Logia Thunder Fruit. And they are all owners of Conqueror's Hockey. Interesting. Saying this, Doflamingo suddenly stood up, raised his hands to the sky, and laughed wildly. Come on, let me see how far you can go. Foo 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 foo. This sea has been silent for too long, and it's time for some fun. Foo 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 foo. Calm Belt, the daughter country of Nine Snake Island. On the throne in the King's Hall, the Queen, Boa Hancock, looked at the contents of the newspaper in his hand, and finally his eyes fell on the 3 ice dragons standing on the top of the ice dragon's head covering the sky, like the 3 backs of the gods coming to the world. Up, snorted coldly. Humph, 3 arrogant people. With that said, Hancock threw the newspaper aside. However, the next moment, Hancock couldn't help whistling the fingernail of his right thumb unconsciously. A strange look flashed across his beautiful face, and muttered. However, he actually challenged Marine in an open and honest way, challenged the world government, and most importantly, he actually wanted to overthrow celestial dragons as the descendants of the creator gods in this world. That man, Zhan Yu, New World, on the Moby Dick. Whitebeard can't help laughing after reading the newspaper. The 3 are no less than the Admiral of Headquarters, and even the little brother named Zhan Yu can compete with Garp in physique. Kula la la, I didn't expect that Sengoku had a misunderstanding. Last time, he only offered a bounty of 100 Bailey to such a character. This time, he was embarrassed. Such an ambitious, yet extremely powerful junior, plus he has found 2 equally powerful subordinates. It must be a headache for both Marine and the world government now. Kula la la la. Wanokuni, Kaido threw down the newspaper, picked up a large jug beside him, and slammed the wine. Cake Island, Baldigo, the island of white soil, the headquarters of the Revolutionary Army. A circle of people sat around a large table, all looking at a newspaper in their hands, reading it carefully. The second person, Chief of the General Staff Sabo, looked at the newspaper in his hand, and suddenly said in surprise. Ha, Zhan Yu, Kuina, what are these 2 names familiar to me? Sabo's voice fell, and a cute girl with short blonde hair was sitting next to Sabo and turned her head to look at Sabo. What, Sabo, did you forget so soon? 7 years ago, after Boss Long rescued you from the sea outside the Goya Kingdom, on the 3rd day after you woke up, didn't we go to a small village called Seymour Jaji Village? Ishin, in that village at that time the host of the Taoist venue, also supported us with a large batch of food. Zhan Yu and Kuina are in that dojo. It seems that one of them is the adopted son of Koshiro Sr., and the other is his own daughter. Saying this, Koala suddenly seemed to remember something and smiled at Sabo. I still remember that you were defeated by Kuina for more than 10 times, eh? Hearing this, Sabo recalled the incident this time, and his face was slightly embarrassed, but then he quickly changed the subject, looked at the dragon walking opposite, and said. Boss, what do you think of this matter? Sitting across from him, the Revolutionary Army leader with a strange and hideous brand on his face, long after hearing Sabo's question, put down the newspaper in his hand with a serious expression, and after thinking about it, he opened his mouth and said. Our purpose is to overthrow the unequal rule of the celestial dragons who dominate the world government, and to destroy the so-called descendants of the gods. However, although Zhan Yu's purpose is also to become a god, but based on my impression of Zhan Yu back then, and his current plan of Dark Moon 12 Riders, we can see that this god is not another god. Zhan Yu, he pursues power, not power. At least, that's how it looks for now. So, until the overthrow of celestial dragons and the world government, we can say allies, because we all have the same purpose. When the others heard this, they also breathed a sigh of relief. After all, a man who can go head-to-head with Garp the Fist and undefeated, and at the same time has found 2 companions whose strength is at least in the naval headquarters, looking at the 3 clearly naive young faces in the photo. When I think that if there are so many more terrifying guys in the enemy, I feel a little scared when I think about it. Just as those who stood on the top of the world were shaken by Zhan Yu's declaration, East Blue, on the endless sea. Standing on the deck of the warship, Zhan Yu looked at a pirate group blocking his path, especially at the red-haired one on the deck of the pirate ship on the opposite side, with 3 scars on his left eye and 3 scars on his right eye. The middle-aged man with an empty arm, his eyes flashed a hint of surprise. However, he returned to his usual gentle appearance. Zan Yu glanced at the pirate flag on the opposite side with the swords crossed behind the skull, and then again looked at the red-haired man on the opposite boat and smiled. It turned out to be the 4 emperors, red-hair pirates, and red-haired Shanks of New World. I didn't expect that a big man like you would not bring them with him in New World. It's really impressive that they came to East Blue, the weakest sea. Unexpected. Standing next to Zan Yu, Kuina and Nami heard Zan Yu's words. He also looked at the pirate group on the opposite side with curiosity. Is this the 4 emperors of the New World, the forces that stand at the real top of this world? On the red-haired pirate ship, Shanks was stunned when he heard Zan Yu's words. He didn't expect Zan Yu to recognize him at a glance. Ben and Beckman, who was standing beside Shanks, also spit out a smoke ring at this time, and said with a dignified expression. Shanks, it looks like what you said was really right. I can feel a very strong sense of oppression from this young man. It has nothing to do with strength, but personal courage. It's like the same feeling I felt when I faced you. The sense of oppression this young man brought me is more than your strength. After saying that, Beckman looked away from Zan Yu, took a deep look at the 2 women beside Zan Yu, and then continued. Even the 2 girls beside him also gave me a sense of oppression. Shanks, you should know what I mean. Behind Shanks and Beckman, Lackey, Lu, Jesus, Bu and other cadres did not have the same ease and the mood of watching Shanks make a fool of themselves this time, and nodded with the same solemn expressions. Although, it's incredible, but I still want to say that the 3 people on the opposite side may all be owners of Conqueror's hockey. Yes, that's my opinion too. Moreover, the strength of the 3 of them is very strong. Even I can only roughly feel the strength level of the orange-haired girl. As for the strength of the other 2, I can't see through it at all. What a terrible 3. Is this still the weakest sea? How come so many monsters appear all at once? For the discussion among the crew members, Shanks did not stop it, because his heart was the same as them at this time. Although when he first saw Zan Yu's sapphire ruby red eyes in the newspaper, Shanks could see the indifference in the eyes of the young man in front of Lee's eyes, his contempt for all beings, and his monstrous ambitions, but until the real when facing him, Shanks felt the terrifying power that accompanied that ambition. At this moment, Rao, who is known as the most hockey man in the sea, can't help but worry about whether this trip can accomplish his goal. Took a deep breath. Then, Shanks took a step forward, looked straight at Zan Yu, and said with a serious expression. Although, I'm sorry, but please grant me a request not to enter the Grand Line. After listening to Shanks' words, Zan Yu couldn't help but stunned for a moment. He never thought that Shanks, one of the dignified New World 4 emperors with red hair, actually came to East Blue because of himself. And listening to what this means, it seems that Shanks is still specifically to prevent himself from entering the Grand Line. For a time, Zan Yu couldn't help looking at Shanks curiously and said, Can you tell me why you are preventing me from entering the Grand Line? For now, I shouldn't have anything to do with you red-hair pirates, right? When Shanks heard Zan Yu's question, he didn't have any intention of concealing his thoughts. He stared at Zan Yu's eyes and said directly, As soon as I saw the photo of you on the Bounty, I saw ambition in your eyes, an ambition more fiery than anyone I've ever seen before. After so many years, under the joint restraint of various forces, the sea has finally regained its current balance. If you enter the Grand Line, your ambitions will inevitably break the balance that you managed to maintain. And now, after seeing you in person, I believe my initial judgment even more. You not only have ambition, but also the strength to support the realization of ambition. In addition to the fact that you have found a powerful Marine Admiral in addition to Kuina, who is a great swordsman, I am shocked by all this. At the same time, it strengthens my determination to stop you from entering the Grand Line. After listening to Shanks' remarks, Zan Yu didn't have time to speak, and Nami next to him was scolded out of rage. Because others are ambitious and powerful, you stop them from entering the Grand Line. Who do you think you are? Where did you get your qualifications? People call you 4 emperors, but in fact you are nothing more than a pirate. Don't take yourself too seriously. Kuina on the side heard Nami's hearty scolding, and couldn't help giving Nami a thumbs up in secret. To tell the truth, Kuina was also irritated by Shanks' face. On the red-haired pirate ship, all the cadres heard Nami insulting Shanks, and all of them looked bad. Although they often laugh at Shanks, and are even happy to see Shanks make a fool of themselves, it doesn't mean that they can tolerate being abused by their captain. Lackey, Jesus on the side of the road, and Bo even pulled out a flintlock pistol and shot Nami directly. Buzz. On the warship, faced with this bullet from Usopp, whether it was Nami, Kuina, or Zan Yu, they didn't care much. Nami didn't even move to dodge the bullets. Because both red hair pirates and Nami can perceive, this shot will not hit Nami's body at all. And that's exactly what happened. Nami glanced at the bullet passing through his ear, and a strand of orange hair that was falling next to him, and then his eyes fell directly on Usopp, who was still holding a flintlock gun. It's just that at this moment, whether it's Nami, Kuina, or Zan Yu, their faces are already cold. On the other side, Usopp also glared at Nami at this time and shouted, "Little devil, don't insult our boss, otherwise, next time it won't be as simple as just shooting a hair out of you." Perhaps seeing Zan Yu's unpleasant expressions, Shanks said at the right time, "My crew was a little reckless just now, please forgive me." Hearing Shanks' words, Zan Yu's eyes moved away from Usopp. Goodlees looked at Shanks, and said in a cold voice, "I'm curious, Shanks, redhead, what stance did you stand on when you said that? Pirates, Marine, World Government, or Celestial Dragons?" As he said that, Zan Yu's eyes suddenly turned to Usopp. The ruby-red eyes seemed to shoot out two sharp swords, and the stabbed Usopp's skin sting. "You, Jesus be you. Born in the village of West Blue, East Blue. Wife Benkina, who died of a serious illness 2 years ago. Son Usopp, in order to restore his mother's condition, went so far as to lie, and now he has become a liar that everyone in Shirobu village shouts and fights. I'm curious, if you don't care about the life and death of your family, your wife, or your son's condition, how can you still be alive now? What else is there to say boldly here? Don't insult our boss. Come on." Okay. Zan Yu's words were like a bolt from the blue, instantly making Usopp pale. "What? Banshina is dead?" Usopp collapsed directly to the ground, looking at Zan Yu in disbelief, trembling all over and his eyes blank. Zan Yu's words were like sharp knives that stabbed directly into Usopp's heart, making Usopp not recovering for a while. Everyone in Red Hair Pirates also discovered Usopp's abnormality at this moment, and immediately looked at Usopp worriedly. "Hey, Usopp, are you okay? Cheer up, Jesus." "Yeah, Usopp, this kid must have lied to paralyze you." Although a group of pirates persuaded Usopp, everyone knew that what Zan Yu said was probably the truth. As I said before, although the battle between ordinary pirates is extremely useful, when the level of strength really reaches its peak, no one will lie. Because lying is itself humiliating to the liar. Seriously, this young man in front of him still thinks he is the owner of Conqueror's Hockey who can rival Shanks. With such a proud heart of a character and such strength, there is no need to lie to Usopp. Shanks glanced at Usopp, who was slumped on the deck, and then turned to look at Zan Yu on the opposite warship. The with a gloomy face was about to flow out of water. "Hey, there are some things, don't talk nonsense. I don't forgive anyone who hurts my partner." When he finished speaking the last word, Shanks' eyes suddenly froze, and a wave of Conqueror's Hockey that dominates the world suddenly erupted from Shanks. Boom, crack, kick. Zan Yu glanced at the warship's fence as if it had been hit hard. The planks were broken, and then took a look at the fierce waves that were already rising between the Red Hair Pirates and the Red Hair Pirates, and then turned his eyes to the opposite. Shanks sneered. "Interesting, you came to stop me from entering the Grand Line for no reason, and I just told the truth, and you still blame me for hurting your companions. Redhead, you are a little too arrogant." In the end, a far surpassing red-haired Hockey directly condensed into a blue-gold light visible to the naked eye and erupted directly from Zan Yu's body. Instantly shattered the red-haired Hockey, rushing towards all directions. At this moment, wherever the blue-golden light passed, everything seemed to be still, and even the flying waves stopped in the air. Okay. At the moment when his Hockey was smashed, Shanks' complexion changed, and he couldn't help but take 2 steps back subconsciously. Hey. At this moment, Shanks and the others seemed to hear the sound of being torn apart, so they turned their heads and looked in the direction from which the sound came. As a result, I happened to see the pirate flag on my ship suddenly turned into strips of rags, flying all over the sky. How dare he? Our pirate flag. He is going to officially declare war with us. Is he going to die? What a crazy brat. Compared with the angry crew members, Beckman's expression is indeed stronger, and the cigar he is smoking is no longer smoking. What a powerful conqueror's hockey, what a precise manipulation ability. While sighing inwardly, then Beckman not only turned his head to look at Zhan Yu, but also thought to himself. My guess is not wrong, this guy's conqueror's hockey, whether it is strength or precise manipulation ability, is still higher than Shanks. At this time, Shanks also glanced at the torn pirate flag, then turned to look at Zhan Yu again. At this time, Zhan Yu also just put away conqueror's hockey, the waves that were originally still in the air just sank, as if he was afraid of something, and would never dare to raise a wave again. In an instant, the whole sea was quiet. And in the next second, humph, the sound of a sharp blade unsheathed suddenly sounded. Shanks pulled out the saber from his waist with his left hand, pointed at Zhan Yu and said, "It seems that we must fight today." On the warship, when Zhan Yu heard the words, a radiance of excitement appeared on his face. After undoing the Han Palace from his waist, Zhan Yu took it in front of him, holding the scabbard in his left hand and the hilt in his right hand, and slowly pulled out Han Shao. As the coldly curved blade gradually exposed, a dazzling blood jade-colored light, a half glow bloomed from the blade. Watching the gradually appearing Han Palace, Zhan Yu said softly, 8 years later, you can finally fight side by side with me. Today, let's use the blood of an emperor to celebrate your real birth for you in Kaifeng. The voice fell. Zhan Yu suddenly pulled out the cold dome, the blade also pointed directly at Shanks on the opposite pirate ship, and shouted, "Come on, redhead, let me see what level the New World 4 emperors have. I don't bully you either. When fighting, I also just use one arm and don't use the unexpected ability of swordsmanship. Let me see, where does your confidence come from blocking my ambitions?" With that said, Zhan Yu waved his hand, and the sea below was frozen into a battlefield again. Besides Zhan Yu, Kuina and Nami looked at Zhan Yu in surprise. They had never seen such an excited look on the face of the man who always smiled gently at them. Maybe, this is the man. Only when they meet their real opponents will they show their other true side. Kuina, Nami watched the girl at the same time and thought in my heart tacit understanding. On the opposite side, Shanks watched this scene and also responded. Okay, if that's the case, then let's make a bet, you two are two, if you win, you will take my life. If you lose, you not only have to apologize to Jesus, but also swear that you will never set foot on the Grand Line in your life, how about that? Zhan Yu heard the words and jumped directly from the warship to the ice. Zhan Yu then looked at Shanks on the pirate ship and said, "Stop talking nonsense, win me, my life will also be given to you." Good. Shanks also jumped down and shouted loudly. On the ships on both sides, whether it was Kuina, Nami, Ben Beckman, Reikalu, or the rest of the pirates looked worried one by one. These two guys, this is too reckless. Looking at the already tense atmosphere below, Nami couldn't help worrying. Hearing that, Kuina said that although Zhan Yu will win despite her hardships, she still couldn't help but feel a little worried. But she still comforted Nami by saying, "Don't worry Nami, Zhan Yu's true power, even I have never seen it." Furthermore, given that Guy's character of never putting himself in danger, if there is no certainty of victory, he will not choose to go head to head. Look, his face is full of excitement now, which shows that he is also looking forward to this battle. Let's just watch him right here now, and pay attention to those guys on the opposite side. With that said, Kuina's eyes turned to the battlefield below, and her hands clasped tightly. Zanpakuto meet Shizuku. And Nami also glanced at Kuina at this time, and said with emotion, "It's obvious that you are the one who is most worried about that guy. Otherwise, with your past character, Sister Kuina, you wouldn't have said so much." With this in mind, Nami also turned his attention to the battlefield below. On the ice surface of the sea, the atmosphere became chilling for a while. At this moment, it seems that the sea breeze is also interested in this battle and is attracted. For a time, the hem of Zhan Yu's white trench coat and the black cloak behind Shanks on the opposite side were blown at the same time, dancing with the wind. At this time, Shanks looked at the cold palace in Zhan Yu's hands, which was glowing red like blood and jade, and praised. "A nice knife." Zhan Yu heard the words, his left hand was directly behind his back, and Han Gong pointed directly at Shanks, and said with a smile, However, it has never been opened, and today is celebrating its birthday with your blood. Shanks didn't get angry when he heard this, but he also put on a stance and said with a light smile. Oh, is it? That would be my pleasure. However, before that, you also need to have the strength to do it. The moment he finished speaking, Shanks' body flashed and disappeared instantly. Seeing this, Zan Yu's ruby red eyes flashed a ray of light, and then he directly waved the cold palace in his hand and slammed it down against the void in front of him. Immediately, a blue-gold sword chi was directly cut out by Han Palace, as if it was about to pierce the heavens and the earth, and slashed straight towards the opposite side. Shanks' figure suddenly appeared in front of the sword chi, and the armament haki of ultimate was wrapped around the western sword in his hand, which fiercely blocked the blue-gold slash. In this collision, the sound of a sharp clash of gold and iron broke out directly. Looking at Shanks being cut out, Zan Yu laughed and said, "Hey, don't come to melee combat at the beginning, at least show your swordsmanship as a four emperors." The body of Shanks, who was hit by Zan Yu's slash, directly retreated to the position where he just stood on the ice. Feeling the slightly trembling arm, Shanks thought to himself, "What a powerful slash. It's almost as powerful as that Mihawk's full blow. This is just a casual knife from Zan Yu in front of me." This man's swordsmanship. Shanks' heart sank suddenly. Looking at Zan Yu not far away, who was standing upright with one hand behind his back, with a relaxed look on his face, Shanks secretly said, "Looks like it's impossible not to give all your strength today." Afterwards, it took time for Shanks's aura to change drastically. At this moment, Shanks seemed to have transformed into a real unparalleled emperor, exuding the breath of making others kneel. On the red-haired pirate ship, Lakealu and other older crew members looked at this scene, and their expressions changed. They were surprised and said, "How is it possible? This is just a move. Has Shanks already used this state? It's incredible. Is the swordsmanship of this guy named Zan Yu really so tyrannical? Yeah, I never used this state even when I was discussing with Hawkeye before. The boss's move was only used when fighting for the throne of the four emperors with those hidden real monsters in the New World." Ben Beckman watched the scene below, silent. The change of breath on the red-haired body, as well as the shocked expressions of the crew members on the red-haired pirate ship on the opposite side, were all taken in by Kuina and Nami on the warship, and they became nervous for a while. Below, Zan Yu looked at the changes in Shanks, his ruby red eyes flashed a ray of light, and said, "Looks like you're ready to show your true skills. Come on, let me see." As soon as the voice fell, Zan Yu slashed out with another blue-gold slash, which seemed to cut through the space, and instantly appeared in front of Shanks. However, in the face of Zan Yu's sudden blow, Shanks shouted, "Then you look good." While speaking, Shanks slammed the western sword across his body, and then stabbed straight at the blue-gold slash. With a roar that was more than 10 times greater than the previous impact, the sea ginger time that was originally frozen by Zan Yu around Shanks exploded, and the sky was filled with ice debris like a thick fog. The ice surface that is also used as a battlefield is directly broken into countless pieces of ice at this moment. It is like a broken island. Even Zan Yu's feet were affected, and cracks appeared on the ice surface. It's amazing. The pirates of Red Hair Pirates cheered when they watched this scene. Only those cadres stared closely at the battlefield below and remained silent. Okay. Zan Yu's eyes flashed red, and then he quickly put the sword on his side. At the same time, at this moment, Shanks suddenly appeared beside Zan Yu, and the western sword in his hand slashed straight towards Zan Yu's body. The sound of gold and iron intersecting sounded again. However, Zan Yu did frown slightly at the moment. Although he blocked Shanks' surprise attack, at the same time, Zan Yu felt as if he had lost something in his heart, but this feeling was only fleeting, and then it returned to normal. What's going on? Zan Yu was a little puzzled, and then he started observation haki thoroughly. Then, as if sensing something, Zan Yu's gaze towards Shanks became a little more interested. While resisting Shanks' sword strikes, he laughed. "Interesting. I didn't expect that your actual sword can cut off people's inner fighting spirit, resistance, persistence and other emotions. Interesting. Is it a combination of Conqueror's haki and swordsmanship? I didn't expect Conqueror's haki to be so useful." Hearing this, Shanks' complexion changed, and the western sword in his hand came at a tricky angle again, only to be blocked by Zan Yu again. "How could you see through my trick so quickly?" Looking at the unbelievable Shanks, Zanyu also rarely explained. Of course your sword told me. My sword. When Shanks heard the words, his face was puzzled, and then he seemed to think of something, and his face changed instantly. Have you not? Seeing what Shanks seemed to have thought of, Zanyu revealed a sinister smile and said, yes, as an intern on One Piece Roger's ship, should you know the observation hockey ability of your captain to listen to everything. Unfortunately, my observation hockey has also cultivated to this level. Hearing Zanyu's confirmation, Shanks exclaimed, you are indeed terrifyingly strong. But what if you have the same observation hockey as Captain Roger? This trick of mine, even if you know the principle, there is no way to hide. Zanyu was talking, the cold palace in his hand was raised, and he wanted to separate Shanks. Since there is no way to hide, why should you hide? Just right, I also have an inescapable sword skill. I wonder if you, the four emperors, can catch my sword. While speaking, Zanyu put one hand behind his back, his body slightly bent, as if he was accumulating energy. Then, Zanyu suddenly shouted, falling Sakura blood rain sword. Everyone on the red-haired pirate ship had a flash of intuition, and then they saw that the positions of Shanks and Zanyu on the ice had been swapped. The next second, under their gaze, Shanks' body suddenly appeared numerous small scars, and blood slowly overflowed along the scars. What a powerful sword, I lost weight and was seriously injured. No wonder you call it an unavoidable sword skill. Shanks also looked down at the small wound on his arm and exclaimed. At this time, on Zanyu's hand with his back to Shanks, a drop of blood fell from the tip of Han Bent's blade, and there was no bloodline on the entire blade. Zanyu didn't believe a word of Shanks' statement that he was seriously injured. Turning around, seeing the wound on Shanks' body that had stopped bleeding spontaneously, Zanyu curled his lips and said, stop cheating. However, your swordsmanship is really good. At that moment, I had the idea of giving up fighting with you and staying in East Blue all my life. You can actually force me to feel lazy. It's amazing. When Shanks heard this, a wry smile appeared on the face of the middle-aged uncle. If it were someone else, even Kaido, who is also the four emperors, would be severely injured not only physically, but also mentally, even if he was attacked by my sword just now. In the end, with you, it will only cause you a moment of laziness. You guy, not only is your strength terrifying, but your faith is even more frightening. Hearing this, Zanyu's eyes flashed with disdain. How about comparing yourself to the so-called four emperors Kaido? A guy whose vision is only the so-called One Piece at most, how can he be compared with himself? Okay, stop talking nonsense, let's fight again. The voice fell, Zanyu took the initiative to attack Shanks this time. When Shanks saw this, he was not to be outdone and greeted him again. The two of you come and go, and you will fight hundreds of tricks in an instant. Time passed minute by minute, and in the blink of an eye, it was already afternoon. At this time, on the battlefield below, Zanyu's advantage has become more and more obvious. It can almost be said that he has won most of the time. Kuina and Nami on the warship gradually let go of their original worries, especially Kuina, who grew up with Zanyu and often consults with Zanyu, but she knows that Zanyu's really powerful sword skills are those his own trick. And those powerful sword moves, Zanyu has yet to use any of them. At this moment, the two women on the warship saw Zanyu who was fighting below. Suddenly, he jumped back and opened the distance between Shanks and Shanks. At the same time, his body took a strange posture. Seeing this scene, Kuina's eyes lit up and whispered, coming. Nami on the side heard this, turned his head to look at Kuina in confusion and asked, Sister Kuina, what's going on? Kuina stroked Nami's orange hair and smiled. Zanyu is about to get serious, you'll know when you watch it. Are you going to get serious? Nami was stunned for a moment when he heard these words, then lowered his head in disbelief and looked at the battlefield where even the ice layer was knocked down by the aftermath of the battle for nearly 10 meters, with a look of disbelief. Isn't the battle like that before? Not serious. And just when Nami's face was full of disbelief, Zanyu's eyes suddenly became sharp, and he said to Shanks not far away. Redhead, I've had enough of this battle, now it's time to end it. On the opposite side, whether it is Shanks or a cadre of the red-haired pirate ship, when the crew heard the words, their expressions changed. Just now, that guy was just playing. How is this possible? With so many wounds left on Shanks, He actually said he was still playing. How strong is this guy really? If, as he said, if he was just playing before, the boss may be in danger this time. No, I can't watch the idiot boss get hurt again. With that said, countless people have taken up arms and are ready to support Shanks. However, at this moment, a terrifying purple-black wave slashed directly from the side of the hull of the red-haired pirate ship with the momentum of severing the world. The pirates who were just about to do it just now felt cold all over their intuitions, as if they were in hell. Gouda, what happened to that sword energy just now? What's going on? The fearful expressions on the faces of the pirates, before they recovered, they heard a series of huge roars suddenly sounded from the side of the ship. Rumbling. Everyone couldn't help turning their heads subconsciously, and the result was that they found that the purple-black sword energy on the ice just now passed, and at this moment, a huge ravine that was dozens of meters wide and could not be seen at a glance. Like a real catastrophe. In an instant, many pirates on the red-haired pirate ship felt their guts were cracked. Even those cadres looked at the scene in front of them, and their expressions were so dignified that they were about to drip out of water. What a terrible sword! Is this the swordsmanship known as the unparalleled swordsman Kuina? Such power has never been seen in the hands of Hawkeye. At this moment, Kuina's voice came from a distant warship. Be honest, if you want to fight, I will fight with you. The pirates of the red-haired pirate ship subconsciously turned their heads and looked at the opposite warship, just when they saw the right hand and pulled out the flesh, and looked at Kuina on their side with cold eyes. Next to Kuina, Nami's body also flickered with lightning, and there was a snap sound from time to time. However, although the swordsmanship shown by Kuina just now is really good, it can only be heard from some of the little pirates. For those cadres, they have long been aware of life and death, adding the strength of each of them. It's also unusual, so it's not affected in any way. Instead, they were irritated by Kuina and Nami's contempt for red-hair pirates, and they took up arms one by one, intending to teach these two little girls how to behave. However, at this moment, Ben Beckman raised his hand to stop the cadre's plans, saying, "Wait, don't do it." It was also at this time that Shanks' voice below also came up. "Don't do it, it's just a battle between me and the two leaders of Zan Yu." After hearing the words of Beckman and Shanks, a cadre of red-hair pirates put away their weapons with expressions of dread. Only Beckman really understood Shanks' words. After taking a sip of the cigar, Beckman glanced at Zan Yu, who was ready to go, then looked at Shanks, and muttered in his heart. "So, Shanks, what are you going to do now? In the face of this boy named Zan Yu's real move, will you use?" Below, Shanks also glanced at the scene where Kuina's sword cut out like a natural disaster, and exclaimed, "Is this Wushwang Zhanji? Really worthy of the word Wushwang?" Zan Yu said with some pride, "That's natural, Kuina, but I want to become a real swordsman who is the #1 in Kendo." Afterwards, Zan Yu's face became serious, and he said, "Then, it's time for you to experience the Kendo that belongs to me. Take it." Sword skill, chasing the stars and falling to the moon. Suddenly, Zan Yu's body seemed to be transformed into a galaxy, and the stars in the galaxy were dazzling. And when the starlight of these stars reaches ultimate, and even illuminates the entire battlefield like the land of day. Among the stars, a crescent moon suddenly rises. And after this round of hooking moon appeared, it absorbed all the starlight. Immediately it emitted 100 times brighter than the starlight. At this moment, Guyu seemed to have gathered enough power, with endless white light and sharp aura, and suddenly attacked the opposite Shanks. On the warship, Kuina looked at Zan Yu's move, especially seeing that even reality was affected, as if temporarily turned into black Yoruichi, and exclaimed in her heart. This time, Zan Yu's power is at least 10 times stronger than his father's battle 8 years ago. At this time, Shanks, who had numerous small wounds all over his body, watched Zan Yu's terrifying move. His expression changed, and he finally gritted his teeth and raised his sword to meet him. Crack! The moment Shanks collided with the dazzling silver moon, a dazzling light erupted. Whether it was the pirates, or Kuina and Nami, they closed their eyes subconsciously. In the next moment, a sound that seemed to break suddenly came from below. Then everyone quickly opened their eyes and looked down. At this time, Zan Yu and Shanks stood opposite each other on the sea where they were fighting, and the distance between them was no more than 5 meters. The only difference is that the cold palace in Zan Yu's hands has already been sheathed. Ask what didn't kill me. Shanks asked suddenly, looking at Zhan Yu's eyes. Zhan Yu has now returned to the gentle boy he used to be, like a gentleman, and said with a chuckle. Because, I have always had a doubt in my heart, and I want to ask you for the answer. Although you are a pirate and one of the 4 largest pirates in the New World, what makes me very curious is that you seem to care about the balance of the sea. You give me the feeling that you are acting as a manager of the sea. In this world, as far as I know, there are only 2 kinds of people who really have this qualification and identity. Zhan Yu's expression finally changed when he saw Shanks, and the corner of his mouth couldn't help but twitch, and continued. The first is the Celestial Dragons, and the second is the clan named D. Speaking of which, Zhan Yu's tone was also a little puzzled. However, as far as I know, there seems to be some relationship between you and the world government 5 elders, but, at the same time, you guide a boy from the D clan to go out to sea in East Blue, and for this reason, you also put an arm of your own bet on that boy. So, your behavior makes me very puzzled. Redhead, which one of the 2 are you from? At this time, Zhan Yu's ruby red eyes seemed to be looking through Shanks, staring at Shanks's eyes, and said, "What is your last name?" Since Zhan Yu started talking, Shanks' face has changed one after another, ranging from shock, puzzlement, doubt, fear, and so on. At the same time, drops of sweat began to ooze out from Shanks' face, and a faint flash of pain flashed. However, with Zhan Yu's last words falling, Shanks did eventually revert to his old age without waves, and even laughed out loud. Ha ha ha. Want to know the answer to all this? Then find it yourself. The sea is so big, you will definitely get the answer you want. I won't tell you. Ha ha ha. Hearing this, Zhan Yu's mouth twitched suddenly, he turned around and left. Sure enough, he got off the Roger boat, and he talks like that. But since you don't say it, then forget it. It just happens that exploring this matter can be regarded as one of the few pleasures on the sea. Gone. After speaking, Zhan Yu stepped on his feet and jumped directly onto the warship. At the same time, the originally frozen sea surface suddenly shattered into pieces of ice and floated on the sea water. Shanks, who was standing on top of a large block of ice, watched the warship pass by, the shadow gradually receding, and suddenly spouted blood. Until he tilted his head and fell on the ice block. At the same time, Shanks' shirt burst suddenly, a ferocious wound suddenly appeared from the left shoulder to the lower waist, and blood spurted out like a burst water pipe. And the western sword that was still in his hand was broken into countless pieces at this time, and scattered beside Shanks, as if whining for its owner. Shanks. Boss. Boss. Looking at the sudden change below, everyone in Red Hair Pirates immediately changed their expressions, and one by one they hurriedly carried Shanks to the boat, and let the ship doctor check and bandage the wound. After some hectic work, Shanks slowly opened his eyes. Seeing everyone around him worryingly surrounding him, Shanks grinned and said jokingly, "Wow, we meet again." After speaking, Shanks seemed to intend to raise his hand again, but a sharp pain came from his body, and Shanks was just cold. The pirates saw that Shanks had woken up, and they were relieved, but when they saw Shanks's actions after he woke up, they couldn't help but cursed. "Your sister. Idiot, the boss is genuine. Someone opened a hole in his body. Shame on us Red Hair Pirates. Idiot boss, quit the group." Shanks smiled happily as he watched his partners return to the past. At this moment, a news bird flew to the top of the pirate ship and hovered. Beckman, who also felt relieved after seeing that Shanks was not in danger of life, saw this scene, and his eyes flashed a little bit. Isn't the news bird usually sent out in the morning? Even if this is East Blue, at the speed of the news bird, it should be able to arrive here at noon at the latest. Could it be that something big happened at the sea? Hey, rooms have been in trouble recently. With such a sigh in his heart, Beckman still waved at the news bird, and spent 100 Baileys to buy a newspaper. However, when Beckman saw the huge photo in the newspaper and the content of the report, his complexion also changed. Do you want to be the king of the gods? What a terrible ambition. After mumbling, Ben Beckman turned and walked directly to Shanks, threw the newspaper on Shanks. After lighting a cigar again, Beckman looked at Shanks lying on the reclining chair and said, "Your hunch was right, that young man named Zhan Yu, his ambition has surpassed everyone in the world. Similarly, his courage has become so big that I can't imagine it." To Beckman's embarrassment, though, his words fell without getting any response from Shanks. Looking down at Shanks, I saw Shanks looking at the other partners around him with a face full of help. Only then did Ben Beckman remember that Shanks couldn't move at this time. The group of guys around seemed to be watching Shanks' good show, and they had no intention of picking up newspapers for Shanks at all. In the end, it was Lackey, and Lou couldn't stand it anymore, so he picked up the newspaper and read it aloud. The shock caused by the reward order. This man, no, this boy. This young man named Zan Yu is fighting Marine hero Garp head-on. He declares that no one can condemn him in time. Announced to become the king of the gods, formed an organization belonging to the gods, Dark Moon 12 Riders. The peerless sword girl who appeared every day was Dark Moon First Rider, the new strongest Logia Thunder Fruit ability Thunder Ting. The messenger Nami is the second rider of the Dark Moon. Meanwhile, Zan Yu has publicly declared war on Marine, world government, world noble celestial dragons. In the next time, I will continue to find the other 10 horses, Mr. Garp, Yu, Sengoku, Marine, and even the world government, as well as those celestial dragons who have been sitting on the throne for 800 years. If you want to stop me, give it a try. After reading this, Lackey, Lou couldn't help opening his mouth, and he was so shocked that he couldn't read anymore, and at the same time, the chicken leg in the other hand fell directly under his feet without knowing it. The other people listened to Lackey and Lou's reading aloud, and at this time, their faces were also full of shock, and it was difficult for them to come back to their senses for a long time. After a long time, the shock on Shanks' face gradually faded, and a wry smile appeared on Shanks' face. No wonder my heart slash had little effect on that guy. It turns out that guys' ambitions have reached such a level. If you want to cut down the entire sea with the power of a sword, how can you really achieve it? Shanks' words also awakened other people who had not recovered, and all of them couldn't help but talk about it. Is that guy too arrogant? Although his personal strength is stronger than our idiot boss, but at the same time declaring war on Marine, world government and celestial dragons, this is tantamount to being an enemy of the whole world. Yeah, who would have thought that this guy is so crazy? If it weren't for, this time the old man Garp met and directly forced out his true strength, no one would know that this guy has such a big heart. Shanks listened to the chatter of his partners, but he smiled bitterly in his heart. It's better than me. That guy just used swordsmanship to fight against me. He has never used the physique that can fight Garp head to head in the report, and the ice handling technique. I don't know, if I use it, can I defeat this guy? Thinking of the trick that Ben Beckman had seen once, that he had hidden so far, Shanks regained some confidence in his heart. At this time, Shanks saw Usopp with his head bowed and a sad expression on his face, and Tong Ran also responded. Usopp, let's go to Shirobu village. We have let you wander on the sea with us all these years, and haven't come home for so long, and we don't even know the news of Banshina's death. We should go and apologize to Kinabun. Hearing this, Usopp looked up at Shanks, who was lying motionless on the reclining chair, and tears of gratitude burst into his eyes. Idiot boss. On the second day, with the arrival of a new day, this time the whole sea is completely boiling because of the latest bounty order. If the big figures of yesterday have been shocked, then today is the shocking time for ordinary people and those little pirates. Countless people looked at the latest reward order in their hands and were shocked and speechless for a long time. Bounty order. The sin is so great that it doesn't matter life or death. Fallen Cthulhu, Lu Cipher, Zan Yu. Possesses transcendent physical skills. Driving ice technique. Reward amount. 1.5 billion Bailey. Charges. Killing the nobles of the kingdom, openly provoking Marine, provoking the world government, provoking the majesty of the world nobility, attempting to form a god organization, 12 Knights of the Dark Moon, and becoming the God King of the Gods. Daring. Unforgivable. Bounty order. The sin is so great that it doesn't matter life or death. The Dark Moon's first rider, unparalleled swordsman Kuina. Possesses the power of a great swordsman. Reward amount. 1.2 billion Bailey. Charges. Killing the nobles of the kingdom, blatantly provoking Marine, provoking the world government, provoking the majesty of the world nobles, Lu Cipher Zan Yu's accomplice. Daring. Unforgivable. Bounty order. The sin is so great that it doesn't matter life or death. The second rider of the Dark Moon, the spirit of Thunder Nami. Has the strongest Logia Devil Fruit, Thunder Fruit ability. Suspected to have Admiral of Headquarters level combat power. Bounty amount: 1 billion Baileys. Charges: openly provoking Marine, provoking world government, provoking the majesty of world nobles, Lucifer Zon Yu's accomplice. Daring, unforgivable. At the moment of seeing these 3 reward orders, the entire sea lost its voice, and it really quieted down. Then, the whole sea broke out completely. Hey hey hey, are you kidding me? I should be dreaming. Yes. It's in a dream, otherwise how could I see the outrageous reward order here? Hi, it's so scary. My scalp is numb. How dare someone openly challenge the majesty of Marine and the world government? What's more daring is that they actually want to become gods. This is a head-on confrontation with the world nobles, celestial dragons. Yeah, what's going on these days? Some people dare to touch the taboos of the celestial dragons. Are you really impatient? Humph. 3 arrogant juniors. I'm just waiting here to see how they die. Challenge the authority of the celestial dragons. It's just not knowing what to say. Compared with the shock and disdain of the little pirates, the slightly larger forces are looking good at this time. After all, but what I know from various sources, Cypher Zon Yu, who can easily challenge Marine hero Garp head-on, the Dark Moon First Scissor who has the strength of a great swordsman, Kuina, the peerless swordsman, and the first time on the bounty with 1 billion Baileys, Bogart who can easily defeat Marine and complement Admiral's strength, Nami, the Thunder Spirit who is capable of Thunder Fruit. With this small group of only 3 people, the combat power can already enter the New World and become the 5th Emperor's force. Such a force, now directly and openly challenging Marine, the world from the government and celestial dragons, these days, is there anything more lively than this? Of course, there are also some more shrewd pirates who have secretly started to prepare at this moment, ready to make enough profits in the wave of the times that is about to be disliked. East Blue, Coco West Village. Nuauchigao, security officer Uncle Aegean and a group of villagers looked at Nami's reward order and set up a banquet to celebrate. Come on. Cheers to Nami becoming the 2nd Dark Moon Rider in Zon Yu's little brother organization. Cheers. Ha ha ha. East Blue, Seymour Jaji Village, Ishin Dojo. The 15-year-old green algae head Zoro took the newspaper from Koshiro, who was sitting on his knees with a smile. Looking at Zon Yu and Kuina's bounty on the newspaper, Zoro looked surprised, especially after seeing that Kuina already has the strength of a great swordsman and already has the title of unparalleled swordsman. While Na was happy, there was also a touch of determination in her eyes. Master, please teach me a stronger swordsmanship. After saying that, Zoro knelt down before Koshiro. Mimi-eyed Koshiro looked at Zoro at this time, and a look of satisfaction flashed in his eyes. Perhaps because of the excitement of Zon Yu and Kuina, Zoro, who is only 15 years old at this time, has truly stepped into the realm of swordsmen. Although it can't be compared with Zon Yu and Kuina's hanging wall, but among ordinary people, such talent is unprecedented. And, similarly, in a huge palace in Alabasta, a graceful woman wearing a white cowboy hat and a gorgeous white trench coat looked at the newspaper in her hand at this time, her beautiful and intellectual eyes a flash of the same look. Are you taking the initiative to declare war on the world, this man, no, this boy? At this time, at the foot of the upside-down mountain, above the Grand Line, an ice dragon with a length of several thousand meters descended from the sky. And behind the ice dragon, there is a warship on its back. Afterwards, the ice dragon fell into the sea and disappeared into the sea, leaving only the warship on the sea, driving forward driven by the sea breeze. This is the group of Zon Yu, Kuina, Nami. On the warship, Nami glanced back at the upside-down mountain behind him with regret, and then turned his resentful gaze to Zon Yu, who was sitting on the sofa halfway down the warship, drinking coffee and reading a book, and complained. Hey, Zon Yu, you're soulless through the upside-down mountain like this, you know. On the other side, sitting cross-legged on the deck, closing his eyes and concentrating on cultivating his own sword god Kuina heard Nami's words, opened his eyes, and Mei-Mu looked over curiously. When Zon Yu heard the words, he also looked away from the book, turned to Nami, and said curiously. What's wrong? This time, Zon Yu didn't know what to ask. When East Blue was about to cross the upside-down mountain, especially when he looked at the turbulent water, Zon Yu was very worried about whether Nami could really control the warship by himself, and instead directly condensed the ice dragon, flew over the calm belt with the warship on its back, and landed directly on the Grand Line. Zanyu didn't feel anything wrong with what he did. Nami looked at Zanyu and Kuina. One was curious and the other was puzzled, just like two seamen who didn't know anything. Originally, I thought you guys had some serious reason not to take the upside-down mountain and flew directly into the Grand Line, so you don't know anything about convenience. Have you really not heard that there is an ancient ritual to enter the Grand Line from the land of the four seas? Zanyu seemed to remember something faintly when he heard this. At this time, Kuina was reminded of curiosity by Nami's words. Her beautiful eyes were full of interest, and she asked, "What ancient ritual? Can I talk about it?" Nami. Seeing that Kuina's curiosity was aroused, Nami raised his fair neck proudly, and then raised his right index finger and introduced it with great interest. This is a custom passed down a long time ago. It is said that whenever a ship safely passes the upside-down mountain for the first time, at the moment of going down the mountain, the crew members will find a wooden barrel, and then all the crew members will put their feet on the wooden barrel, and then shout out to the sea, "Ahaf own wishes." And after such a loud declaration, the sea will also bless you in the future to realize your wishes. Hearing Nami's introduction, a look of surprise suddenly appeared on Kuina's cold little face, as if surprised that there is such a custom. Afterwards, Kuina subconsciously turned her gaze to Zanyu, who was sitting on the sofa with Erlang's legs crossed and a thick book on his lap. His mouth slowly lifted, and there was a rare trace of regret for Zanyu in his small eyes, dissatisfied. Zanyu, who had just taken a sip of coffee, looked at Kuina's small eyes, and almost spit the coffee out of his mouth at Kuina's cute little expression that didn't agree with his own image. Even Nami on one side looked at Kuina like this, and two hearts appeared in his eyes. In his mouth, he murmured subconsciously, "So cute, kawaii." Nami's murmur instantly woke Kuina up. This time, when he recalled what he did just now, he couldn't help but blushed and lowered his head, not daring to look at Zanyu and Nami again. But, what happened to me just now? It's over. How should I face Zanyu and Nami in the future? Zanyu didn't know the roar in Kuina's heart at this time, but Zanyu could roughly guess something. A gentle smile appeared in his ruby-red eyes, and he secretly said in his heart, "I didn't expect Kuina to have such a hobby besides practicing swordsmanship." But that's right, Kuina has only concentrated on practicing swordsmanship since she was a child, and has been working hard to become the world's greatest swordsman one day. But in the end, she's just an innocent little girl with little experience. I like such rumors, and interesting things are inevitable. Thinking of this, Zanyu tentatively said, "How about we fly back and walk the upside-down mountain again?" Nami on the side saw that Kuina's cute little expression had disappeared, and when he felt regretful, after hearing Zanyu's voice, he immediately turned his head and looked at Zanyu angrily with his left hand on his hips, saying, "Flying, go back and walk again. You didn't listen to me carefully just now, only the moment when you entered the Grand Line for the first time. You have a sense of ceremony, now go back and walk again. Is it the first time?" Quote. Seeing Nami teaching himself a lesson, Zanyu brought a playful smile to his mouth, looked at Nami and said, "A mere sailor who I have chosen dares to speak up and teach the master a lesson." When Nami heard this, her hair instantly exploded. Who is a sailing tool? The status of the old lady is the navigator you invited. She is the second rider of the Dark Moon. While Nami was roaring, Zanyu suddenly threw the saber around his waist and said casually, "Oh, by the way, now you have to add another identity, that is my sword attendant, that is, the sword bearer. You have to work hard. I am very optimistic about you." Having said that, Zanyu also gave Nami an encouraging look. Subconsciously taking the cold thrown by Zanyu, Nami remembered the amazing scene when Zanyu pulled out of the Han Palace, and couldn't help but want to take a look, but at this moment, Zanyu's words came over. Hearing that Zanyu randomly arranged another identity for himself, Nami suddenly became a little angry. He couldn't help but hug Han Gong and rushed to Zanyu's side to make a theory, but no matter what Nami said, Zanyu was drinking coffee. Reading the book, I nodded perfunctorily from time to time, as if agreeing with what Nami said. Seeing Zanyu's look, Nami couldn't wait to take a bite of Zanyu. On the other side, Kuina, whose mentality has recovered, looked at the two who were making noise again, and a smile appeared on her cold and pretty face. At this moment, a news bird flew from the sky, hovering over the warship. Seeing this scene, Kuina waved directly, and then the newsbird bought a newspaper and spread it out to read. However, after seeing the latest reward order, Kuina's face flashed a little, then turned to Zanyu and Nami and said, "Zanyu, we've placed a bounty again, oh, and Nami, you too. Also, the amount of the reward is not very low, do you want to take a look?" When Nami heard Kuina's words, he didn't care to get angry with Zanyu, and quickly trotted to Kuina's side, took the newspaper from Kuina's hand, and watched. "Hey, Zanyu, you actually got a reward of 1.5 billion Bailey. Your worth has increased by 15 million times." After seeing Zanyu's bounty, Nami couldn't help but exclaimed, turned his head and congratulated Zanyu, who didn't seem to be very interested. "It's just that the value has increased by the last 15 million times. What the hell is it?" And restrain the strong sneering in that tone. "Hey." Zanyu couldn't help rolling his eyes. At this moment, Nami's voice continued to come, and he said in surprise, "Huh, Zanyu, your title has also been changed. It's no longer the little white face next to the Wu Shuang Gng, but the current, fallen god, Lucifer." Quote. When Zanyu heard the title, he was stunned for a moment, and then he took out the jade pendant with the word, Zanyu, engraved on his neck from under his chest clothes. Looking at the jade pendant in his hand, Zanyu remembered the comic book, Stealing Stars in September, that he had read a few times in his previous life. Zanyu especially remembered that the Zanyu in that comic not only had the same, he looks exactly the same as himself, and at the same time, he also has the title of Lucifer. Zanyu was a little stunned for a while, and murmured softly, "Is it all just a coincidence?" But, for a time, Zanyu fell into deep thought. On the other hand, Nami is still showing off to Kuina. "Sister Kuina, look at my title, Elf of Thunder, it sounds good, isn't it? The bounty of 1 billion Baileys." Kuina also responded with a smile. For a while, neither of the two girls noticed Zanyu's abnormality. A few days later, Zanyu and his party have arrived at Whiskey Peak. After leaving the harbor, Zanyu's face showed a hint of surprise when he saw the pirate ships parked around, and even a few warships were mixed in them. Is this the same poor little place that Luffy saw later in his past life memory? And doesn't it mean that this is the cemetery of pirates, where a lot of bounty hunters gather to hunt rookie pirates who have just come to the Grand Line from the Four Seas? Why are there so many pirate ships here now? And there are actually a few warships parked inside. Aren't pirates and pirates opposed? Why does it seem like a peaceful coexistence now? Spooky. Everything is spooky. After stopping the warship, Zanyu and the three put on a robe for unnecessary trouble. After hiding their body under the robe, they walked off the warship this time. On the way to the town, Zanyu and the three met a lot of people dressed like them, and the whole island seemed very lively. Kuina, Nami, pay attention to both of you, the bitterness here is a little weird. While walking with Zanyu, the two women who were curiously looking at all kinds of quirky gadgets at the roadside vendors turned their heads curiously when they heard Zanyu's words. "Zanyu, what's wrong? Did something happen to you?" Saying that, Kuina also released observation haki, and watched the surroundings vigilantly. Nami on the side saw this, and he also used his hard network skills to check the surroundings back and forth. As a result, neither of the two women found anything abnormal. At this time, I heard Zanyu introduce his original situation here. While talking, the three of them walked, and soon came to the town. It was also at the moment when he entered the town, the system interface in Zanyu's mind, a new heritage hero pattern suddenly lighted up slightly, and then returned to the previous dark appearance. It is worth mentioning that the light this time was very weak. If the same dim light of inheritance had not appeared in front of Zanyu's eyes at this time, Zanyu would almost have thought that what he saw just now was an illusion. Huh, interesting, doesn't it say that the detectable range is 100 nautical miles? How do you see that this new guy is less than a few kilometers away from me? System, is your detection ability broken? Hearing Zanyu's question, the system explained. As host sees, the fit between the new inheritor and the legacy hero is slightly weaker this time, so. Is it a little weak? It's almost weak, okay. Zanyu was able to complain, and then remembered the inheritance of himself, Kuina, and Nami, and then heaved a long sigh. He said to himself, I don't know if it was the unfortunate thing this time. Can he really light up the light of inheritance in the end? Kuina and Nami on one side were looking around vigilantly after listening to Zan Yu's introduction to the island, when suddenly they saw Zan Yu, who was walking in the front, listen to it. To Zan Yu's self-talk. Hearing the appearance of a new inheritor, the two girls were both surprised, but looking at Zan Yu's sigh, she became even more curious. Hey, Zan Yu, isn't there a new inheritor? Why are you sighing? Hearing this, Zan Yu turned his head and glanced at Nami, then looked at Kuina who was also looking at him curiously, thought for a while and said. This is not a place to talk, let's find a restaurant first and chat while eating. This new fainting thing, I want to ignore it directly. Rarely heard a complaint from Zan Yu's mouth. Kuina and Nami's eyes flashed with surprise, and then they became even more curious about the situation of the new inheritor who forced Zan Yu to complain so. A few minutes later, the three of Zan Yu entered a relatively upscale restaurant in the town. After ordering food, they found a seat near the window and sat down. Looking at the curious eyes of the two women, Zan Yu was about to speak when the three suddenly heard the lively chatter in the surrounding hall. Hey, I heard that the world's greatest swordsman, Hawkeye, is going to challenge the Dark Moon's first rider, the peerless sword girl Kuina, on this island. Is this true? I heard from New World. After this incident, he rushed over directly. If it is fake, Lousy will go back and protect the head of that fool who lied to me. Rest assured, it's true. Hawkeye is now on the island, waiting for Kuina to arrive from East Blue. Yeah, I heard that this incident has already made a lot of noise in the entire Grand Line, and many people came here from all over, just to watch the two of them compare swords, and want to see the world's largest swordsman. Will the throne change hands? It's true, and Hawkeye has been waiting on this island for more than half a month. The only thing I don't know now is when that Kuina will arrive. It should be soon. Didn't I just report the road cipher Zan Yu a few days ago? Dark Moon's first ride Kuina, the second ride Nami, 3 people in Logue Town. According to the distance, it will be 3 or 4 at the latest. God, they'll be here. Hey, did you say that the peerless sword girl Kuina heard Hawkeye's challenge and got scared? Shish, you idiot, don't die. Those 3 people even dared to provoke Marine, and even the world government, would they be afraid of Eagle Eyes? Hearing the chatter of the pirates in the surrounding restaurants, Zan Yu and Nami turned to Kuina at the same time. At this time, 2 dazzling sword intents suddenly erupted in Kuina's beautiful eyes, and many people in the hotel felt a tingling sensation on their exposed skin at this moment. Of course, there were also some swordsmen who also came here to watch the battle, and their eyes instantly locked on Kuina, who was shrouded in robes, and a subconscious thought arose in their hearts. This man is a very strong swordsman. Aware of everyone's gaze, Kuina realized that she was a little out of tune, so she put away her aura and looked at Zan Yu apologetically. When Zan Yu saw this, he smiled and shook his head, then said, "Let's grow up together. I know that your wish since childhood was to challenge Hawkeye and become the world's greatest swordsman. Now, since the goal has appeared in front of you, Ancient 353, Aina, don't hesitate to realize your dream. Other things, just leave it to me at ease." Zan Yu's voice fell, and Nami on the side also raised his hand and hurriedly said, and me. I am also a thunder spirit, the second rider of the Dark Moon. If anyone dares to challenge Hawkeye and Sister Kuina, time to make trouble. This girl must let him know the taste of thunder and lightning. Saying that, Nami also raised a small pink fist rubbed with his right hand. It seemed like a demonstration. As for Nami's left hand, she is holding Zan Yu's Cold Palace. She seems to have adapted to being Zan Yu's sword attendant. Kuina looked at Zan Yu and Nami, who were encouraging and supporting her, and a feeling of emotion surged in her heart. A beautiful smile suddenly appeared on the originally cold cheeks, which was heart-wrenching. Afterwards, Kuina yanked off her robe, revealing her true face in public. A sword intent that was 100 times stronger than before suddenly erupted from Kuina Na's cold, slender body, and instantly seemed to form a sword domain within a few thousand meters, and the sword intent was vertical and horizontal. Within the sword territory, many scratches appeared on the surface of many buildings, as if they had been slashed by a sharp sword. In the restaurant, many people looked at Kuina's face and lost their voices. Obviously, they recognized Kuina's identity. Of course, there are also many people who haven't recognized Kuina yet. All of them are just a powerful swordsman, and they all cast their respectful eyes. At this time, no one knew who suddenly shouted. She is the first rider of the Dark Moon, the peerless sword girl Kuina. This sentence is like detonating an explosive barrel, and everyone in the entire hotel lobby suddenly screamed in surprise. What? She's that great swordsman with eagle eyes waiting here for a challenge. Wu Shuang Gng. She's really so young. It's definitely not over 20 years old, right? What a terrifying talent. Am I the only one who noticed the sword intent radiating from her body? It's really scary. Hey, since Kuina is Darkmoon's first rider, then the two next to her are. Yes, those two must be Lu Cypher Zan Yu and the second rider of the Dark Moon, Nami the Thunder Spirit. Hey, I didn't expect to actually see them today. Listening to the heated discussions around, Kuina frowned slightly and shouted. Shut up. The moment he spoke, the purple-black conqueror's haki on Kuina's body was like Shira, and it was instantly crushed by the people in the hotel lobby who were talking about it. Forehead. In an instant, more than 90% of the people in the hall turned white and fainted. Only 4 or 5 pirates left by Kuina deliberately looked at Kuina in surprise. Murmured, this is Conqueror's haki. By the way, the bounty says that Kuina is the owner of Conqueror's haki. Immediately, the remaining 4 or 5 people were shocked and speechless. At this time, Kuina looked directly at the few people who were still awake, and said coldly. Say, where is Hawkeye now? Seeing the gaze cast by Kuina, several people shook their bodies and said quickly. Hawkeye, he's now on the hillside behind the town. That's right, where is he waiting for you now? After getting the big answer she wanted, Kuina looked down at Zan Yu and Nami and said, let's go over now. Hearing this, Zan Yu nodded and stood up, while Nami looked at Kuina with some admiration and said. Sister Kuina, you looked so handsome just now. While talking, the 3 of them left the hotel and walked towards the back mountain. After a long time, the few people who were still awake in the hotel recovered from their shock. As if after a glance, they hurried out of the hotel and spread the news that Kuina was looking for Hawkeye. For a time, the whole town rioted, and everyone rushed towards the back mountain. 10 minutes later, when Zan Yu, Kuina, and Nami came to the foot of the back mountain, they found that the entire back mountain was already crowded with people. At this moment, Kuina's eyes locked on the figure standing on the top of the mountain, wearing a black dress and carrying a large black knife behind her back. Hawkeye, Dracula Mahawk. When Kuina said the name softly, the fighting intent in her eyes boiled. And Zan Yu glanced at the eagle eye on the top of the mountain, his eyes turned directly to the crowd. When he saw a figure, his eyes flashed, and he thought to himself. It turns out that the snow egg is you. After confirming the identity of the new inheritor, Zan Yu and Nami followed Kuina and walked towards the top of the mountain. At the same time, all the pirates standing on both sides of the back mountain looked at the 3 people walking towards the mountain, and began to discuss fiercely. These 3 people have such a strong aura. As expected of people who have the ambition to become gods, they are not ordinary. Yeah, when these 3 people walked past me just now, I didn't even dare to breathe. Looks like it's the right time this time. Today's challenge will definitely be exciting. I don't know if the throne of the world's largest swordsman will change hands today. At this time, on the side of the mountain, a group of pirates looked at their homes curiously. At the same time, in a certain corner of the pirates, a group of watch thieves looked at the boss of their own family and had a heated discussion. Hey, boss, how do I feel that Lu Cypher Zan Yu gave you the last look? Yes, I feel the same way. What's going on? Don't tell me, boss, you've been hiding something. You know this kind of big man before. Hey, boss, what else are you hiding from us? Hurry up and tell the truth today. Hey, boss, what else are you hiding from us? Hurry up and tell the truth today. Yeah, Ace, if you don't tell the truth, we'll tie you up next time that female marine chases after you. Ace speechlessly looked at the group of guys around whose eyes were about to burst into flames, and slandered in his heart. Is there such a threat to your boss? Even if I'm not the boss, but just an ordinary partner, you wouldn't threaten me by kidnapping me and throwing it to Marine. However, looking at the partners of the Spade Pirates around who were not giving up, Ace finally opened his mouth and said. Would you believe me if I said I didn't know this guy named Zan Yu at all? However, Ace's words were exchanged for the unbelieving faces of his partners. At this time, Deuce silently added, I report that this guy Ace is also from East Blue. Ace's eyes widened instantly, looking at his best brother and best friend Deus, who betrayed him in disbelief, as if he had reacquainted with this person. Deuce, you actually betrayed me. Wouldn't your conscience hurt? Hearing this, Deus raised his right hand and touched his heart, and then he answered honestly. It doesn't hurt at all. Ace's face stiffened, he really didn't expect that Diogenes had such a skinny side. And at this time, the others did besiege Ace again, said. Hey, boss. Don't change the subject. That's right, your acting skills are simply unbelievable. It's impossible to deceive us, hurry up and explain. If we don't explain it, we will. Ace also grinned when he saw that his performance showing his true feelings was seen by everyone at a glance, and then after swearing that he didn't know Zan Yu, he was let go by a group of friends. After a long sigh of relief, Ace looked at Zan Yu's back, who was already walking towards the top of the mountain, and thought to himself. This man did look at me just now, but why is this happening? Does he have any purpose? Also, his age seems to be the same as mine. Has he really been able to challenge the old man head on? What kind of confidence does he have when he openly provoked Marine, provoked the world government, provoked celestial dragons, and openly announced that he would form an organization of gods and become the king of the gods? Who is this guy? At the same time, in the high-rise building in the town near the back mountain, a group of Marines held binoculars and stared at the situation of the back mountain. Vice Admiral, now that the pirates are gathered together, Lucifer Zan Yu and his group of madmen have also climbed the back mountain, should we start the arrest plan? Hearing the Marine soldier's question, the other Marines turned their heads at the same time, and looked at the Naval Headquarters Vice Admiral and the Whispering Mouse Vice Admiral, who were sitting on the sofa at this time with a red coxcomb head. When Vice Admiral heard the soldier's question, he did not answer immediately, but turned to look at a signal soldier beside him and said, Qingshang Admiral hasn't arrived yet. When the communications soldier heard the question from the language mouse, a trace of embarrassment flashed across his face, and he said, Reporter Vice Admiral, after the phone call just now, no one spoke, and he heard snoring. Judging from Qingshang Admiral's behavior in the past, Qingshang Admiral should be coming to a certain section of the Whiskey Mountains now, fell asleep on the road. When Vice Admiral heard the words, his expression froze, and then he shook his head in distress and said, An attack is not allowed until the Admiral of Qingshang arrives. After all, there are so many pirates here, and among them there is no shortage of powerful pirates. It is difficult for us to arrest them. Especially the Lucifer Zan Yu trio. Although they are three madmen, it is undeniable that their strength is indeed very strong. Whether it is Zan Yu who can go head-to-head with Garp Vice Admiral, Kuina who has the strength of a great swordsman, or the ability of Logia Thunder Fruit the Nami, are extremely tricky beings. It's not a wise choice to fight these people before Qingshang Admiral arrives. Furthermore, Wushuang Jian Kuina will soon have a decisive battle with Hawkeye, and it is just this opportunity to let them consume their stamina. With their existence at this level, it is impossible to end without a few days and nights. Let's just wait here. After listening to Vice Admiral's analysis, the Marine soldiers responded with admiration, and replied sternly. Yes, at this point, Kuina, Zan Yu, and Nami have already reached the top of the mountain. And the Eagle Eye, staring at Kuina from beginning to end, said, You finally came. Kuina nodded to Zan Yu and Nami next to him, and the two walked aside, leaving the battlefield to Kuina and Hawkeye. Today, the two of them are the protagonists here. Kuina looked at Hawkeye, the sword intent on her body exploded instantly, her eyes were full of fighting intent, she looked at Hawkeye and said, To be honest, part of the reason I went to sea was because of my promise to someone since I was a child, and the other part was to find you, challenge you, and take the throne of the world's greatest swordsman. I originally thought that I would not be able to meet you until at least the second half of Grand Line and fulfill my dream, but I didn't expect that Gigi would be waiting for me here today. So, today, I will laugh at your throne as the world's greatest swordsman. With that said, Kuina slowly pulled out the Zanpakuto meet Shizuku cough. Hawkeye heard the words, his meticulous and serious face did not show any anger, and he also drew out the supremely sharp sword, He Dao Yi, who was carrying the sword behind his back. Holding the hilt of the knife in both hands, Hawkeye said, if your swordsmanship can defeat me, the title of the world's greatest swordsman will be yours. After the words were finished, the atmosphere on the top of the mountain suddenly quieted down, and two monstrous sword intents suddenly erupted, colliding frantically. This is the real swordsman. The challenge does not need too many reasons, only the sword in his hand. On the side, Nami looked at the two people who were on the same level and asked Zan Yu with some worry. Zan Yu, Kuina's sister, can really beat Hawkeye. You know Hawkeye's reputation as the world's largest swordsman, but by defeating a world-famous swordsman, especially the saber in his hand, He Daoyi, who is known as the first of the 12 supreme swords, makes Hawkeye even more powerful. Kuina, is my sister really okay? I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.